Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Corey LaSline. You are listening to Ceremonial Witchcraft. Yeah, what the fuck is going on? So yesterday, Wi-Fi dropped. I kept reconnecting. So I was watching it, waiting for it to come back, and it came back, and I kept doing it over and over again. So I knew it was about to start and make a new episode. In fact, I think it did. Maybe it was the one before that. There's a small little 3-minute fucking audio file or episode somewhere that I haven't deleted. But when that was happening, I think there was 3 minutes left of the recording I was currently doing. I'm not talking about Kabbalah, the great work of self-transformation. But that, we got through almost the whole Neophyte. When I played that when I was going to sleep last night, and I just wanted to see how far I got. And to my surprise, the 3 hours I have to go to record, it didn't actually get to even finish or get to the it's on page. We're on page 70 as far as because I went back to the episode and I listened to it. And we're at page 70, and it was going through the Neophyte curriculum at a glance to be practiced for a minimum 6 months. The daily Neophyte formula: the fourfold breath, lesser vanishing ritual, the pentagram, middle pillar, and Neophyte meditation, and additional exercises which you should do. The 4 adorations, which puts you in sync with the sun cycle, among other things for the sun cycle, the daily tarot card, and science exercise. Now, if you don't have a tarot deck and you can't do the daily tarot card, well, you can easily go on and, like I said before, I don't know for sure, but I'm sure there's probably an app out there where, you can play cards, you can, I'm sure, and if not, maybe that could be your idea to invent something. Invent a cyber tarot deck for people that don't have a tarot, have tarot cards, I just came up with that idea. And I don't care if you take it and make something out of it and make money off it. Just remember who gave you the idea, I guess. But and maybe there is something out there already. But maybe there's a cyber tarot deck, free app, or maybe it's a couple bucks instead of having to pay the $30 or $40. Mine was $65, I think $70 with tax. I got the gold edition and all that. And I went to Ottawa, a bigger town, but my hometown has I think we only have one New Age occult store, but I haven't ever went to. Although my wife buy me things from there, but I haven't went there yet. And I should go support, even if it's not technically maybe what I do, but I should still go support them. But there are other stores here, like our bookstore sells tarot decks and all this shit. So if you're thinking, you don't have anything around, well, if you have a bookstore, I think our bookstore is Kohl's. In here in Cornwall, Ontario, and we're only a 48,000 person town. We're not a very big town, and we have tarot decks here in the town. So if you're bigger than that, then great. If not, if you know where there's a bookstore, go check it out. New Age section, maybe even your spirituality section, depends on whoever's running the place and what their opinion of New Age and spirituality is. Of course, they have guidelines, but it is what it is. Polarization, which we're going to talk about today, but. First 2 things I want to do is I want to finish just the Neophyte at a glance part of it. If there's any more of the Neophyte curriculum details, I want to say there's probably maybe 4 to 5 more pages left of what you need to know for the Neophyte grade. And I don't want to not put it on here today. So that's going to be the first thing I do, because I don't know how long it's going to take to go through it. I'm actually going through it right now to see how many pages it's at left, because if 3 hours took from 0 to 70, I gotta find a way to speed it up. I don't know how to do it on my laptop. On the iPhone, it's so much easier, because when you take your 2 fingers and you scroll down from the top of your phone to the bottom, once you have it set up, you just go in your settings on your phone, you go to the iBook settings, I think, anyways, as far as I remember, and you put on the speech part. There's going to be different things in there, but you turn that on. If you can't figure it out from what I was saying, if you go on YouTube, and there's going to be videos on how to get iBooks to read you any book. And not all books are going to be able to do that, especially if you're getting PDFs and the papers. Pages don't look so well. So there you may have to use an audio a program, an app. You can use Kindle, different things like that. But there are online things. And you can always check on YouTube. Some of these books might be free on YouTube that you think can't read, or other places. Always look up as much as you can before you decide to purchase or buy something. But anyways, So far, I'm at page 85, and it's talking about history of life, the sensor, the elements, the book, Neophyte checklist. I'm at page 87, so we're gonna have to do some math. The dark, splendid world. This is chapter 5, and this is when it starts to go into the next grade, I believe, after this. The grade of Zelter. Yes, that's right. Okay, so and that's the one I just finished. So I'm going to highlight all this, and I'm going to have it play for you guys. And then I'm going to play the rest of my clip. Actually, I'm going to go in order. The first video I put out yesterday was the big rant on the devil and all that. Like I said, there was only 3 minutes left, but I'm just going to play the 10-minute clip that I was playing that I got cut off for the last 3 minutes, because this thing might not start right away anyways, and I don't know from page 70 to page 81 how long it's going to be. However, if from page 0 to page 70 it took 3 hours, well, if we take 3 hours, we turn that into minutes on a scale of 100. That is 180 minutes roughly, right? So it's 180 divided by 70 is going to give you how many, basically, I mean, it depends on how many words on a page as well, but how much it would be for a page. So I'm going to go do that math because I can't think it off the top of my head. 18 divided by 7 doesn't do anything nice, so that's why. But anyways, I don't have the calculator up here to do that. I'm just fucking going out my ass right now, so sorry about that, guys. Anyways, so I'm going to play my clip from the other video from 2 episodes ago, not the Kabbalah book, and I was going to put the Kabbalah book on here all at once, but that was really going by how much I got through it. Now this book is, I want to say, 360 some pages, and I got through 70s. Technically, that's not even, I mean, if 280 would be fucking 70 times 4, right? I mean, so we're looking at, like, that's only a sixth of what happened here. So that means 6 episodes to go through every one of these. So I may have to find ways to cut down or speed up this process. But anyways, so this is a 6-month practice. And I know everybody's probably not the same level or grade. So that's why I will go up and put the next grade on there as well, just so it's always there. I may even go 2 grades, put the one I'm currently at on there as well, just in case. But this way, I don't have the full entirety book on there, but it's going to be something I do nightly. So look for that tomorrow morning, or if you're up tonight around 11 or 12, that's probably when it's going to go live on there. So without further ado, I'll play the clip that got cut off yesterday, and then after that it will be the book, and then you're going to hear me come on to introduce and talk about Rosicrucianism, why it's important, and what I want you to get out of the next person I'm going to bring on, and why it's important. I want to talk about a couple things. So yeah, well, let's just get through it, shall we? Anyways, I hope you enjoy.
Alright, I kind of forget where I was going or where I left off, so I can come back to it after, but I know I'm kind of far away from the whole Adam and Eve projection or metaphor I'm trying to use Adam and Eve and
conscious mind, subconscious mind, and then the snake and Saturn, and now I'm talking about Saturn and Libra, Venus, and blah, 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 blah. So I'm a little far off the topic, but since I'm on it, I'm going to keep going because, well, Saturn and Libra is something very important to understand, or just Saturn and Venus in general. It doesn't have to actually be with the sign of Libra, although it's something, like I said, is very important to understand, because even if you don't have that sign, it still affects you, right? All these things affect everybody in some way, shape, or form. But Mars is the red planet, and the devil is associated with red. I have that in the description or in the title, one or the other. And Venus is Lucifer morning star. In the Bible, it was called that, and it wasn't referring to anything being evil. And that got adopted somewhere down the line. And I have said it before in a previous video that a Venus... an unbalanced, Venus, someone who takes on Venus, Venus can be very, very materialistic, likes to look good, infatuated with their look. So somebody who's got a lot of Venusian qualities, as myself, as a kid, when I decided my consciousness, what I wanted to be that good-looking guy, athletic jock type that everybody liked. But at the same time, I liked punk rock music and I liked skateboarding. So I wanted to meld all these things together, the things I thought were cool and the things I thought other people thought were cool. I wanted to be all of it. And, being very Venusian, I was blessed with people thinking I was a good looking person, especially in, grade school is grade school. But anyways, every girl in the class that I thought was attractive, I quote unquote dated. And I say that because it's not really dating. We did some things after school, the later grades that we got or whatever. But for the most part, it was just holding hands, kissing in the schoolyard. But what I mean by that is it made me very egotistical. Back then, thinking I was really good looking. And after dating every girl in my class, I started hanging out with other girls from other schools, dating other girls from other schools, always being arrogant, always bragging. I noticed, though, by doing that, I actually attracted women more than if you're not egotistical, which is kind of weird to say, but, the movies keep saying that girls are attracted to assholes, and either that's true or that became true because they put that idea out there. Who knows? I'm not here to debate that. But point is, an unbalanced Venusian energy, and everybody has Venus in their chart. So, but if that's unbalanced, then yeah, I could see the reference to Lucifer. Likewise, Saturn gets the name of Satan. He gets a bad rep, and that's what they turned him to. So you have Mars and Satan being the devil, and Satan, Saturn and Satan. And then you have Lucifer, which is the fallen angel apparently, but yet it's still in the sky because it's actually a star, but that's also associated with the devil. So we have these three astrological energies that are above us, below us, within us, without us. And if, before this, hopefully now you're starting to get understanding that Lucifer isn't a fallen angel, that the devil isn't an actual person, that Saturn and Satan aren't something there like the Grim Reaper to keep killing people and all that. Those are aspects of Saturn, but everything has a negative and positive into it. Now, Saturn's a very negative planet, and he has correspondences to Earth, especially whenever, exalted in Libra and all that, kind of like the sun is exalted in Aries. Well, Aries is an air sign, the sun's an air sign. And that's what I kind of meant by the plus plus. There's plus plus right there, Aries being plus and being air, right? Aries air. And the sun being also air, being positive, whereas Saturn is exalted in, it'd be Venus or Gaia, our Earth, but it's exalted in Libra, which is ruled by Venus, which is an Earth element, which I have a lot of Earth elements in my chart. So Earth is negative, just like water is negative. The two positives are air and fire, and the two negatives are water and earth, or if you take it to gender, then those two would be female and the other two would be male. So when Saturn is that minus plus, so he's got polarity right built in him, and you can see that right off the hop. But my point is, if you are thinking these things are bad, evil, dangerous, harmful, whatever, bad, I guess is the word I'm looking for, then you are basically calling these planets bad. If you think Lucifer and the devil and Satan are, everything you do bad, you blame on them, which is bullshit. But anyways, if that's what you do, well, you're blaming yourself. You got to understand that. There's a reason, this is all me speculating, but I am, fairly certain the reason that they've changed Venus into Lucifer. Venus always was Lucifer, morning star, but the reason that Lucifer is now been demonized and is a bad influence, bad energy, is so that, Venus is a very beneficial planet. You can ask Venus for a lot of things and get a lot of things. When Saturn is in Libra, if you have that placement, that can bring you lots of wealth. You've already probably heard that on one of the clips I played from an astrologer. And likewise, in Mars is your passion, is your purpose. It's tied to your sexual energy, as is the moon. But it's tied to your passion and your purpose. And by demonizing that, you're basically saying, it's evil to be on your passion, your purpose. All I'm trying to get you to point the picture in Saturn, your root chakra, the beginning. This is something as well. If you've demonized it, you said it's bad, it's not good. Well, this is a part of you. Your 7 chakras are the 7 planets. Your body parts, your organs are all associated to the planets. And if these planets are being called by different names, but are still the planets, it's just someone down the line said, well, this is going to mean this, but we're not going to tell people that means that. So every time people say this, they're really cursing themselves. I curse you, Satan. I curse you, but you're cursing yourself. You're blaming something outside of you when it's really inside of you the whole time. So Saturn in Libra is Venus, right? I talked about opening your root chakra. That's going down the fear-based media path and realizing that all your beliefs, your self-limiting beliefs, your programming, I guess, is all bullshit, and you have to get rid of it. Well, just by doing that, you start breaking down your programming. That's the first step, and to me, that's the beginning of initiation. And I know magical initiation may be considered different, but this is the beginning. People get stuck on the conspiracy stuff. And I get it. It's very easy to do. I mean, everybody gets stuck on it for probably a different period of time. But for me, it was close to like a year. And I still dip in and check it out sometimes. But so that's when I begin in the fear-based media. Or it doesn't have to be just fear-based media, but it could be whenever you realize that heaven and hell, that being your two polarities, your two sides of the pendulum swing, cause and effect. If I do something bad, I don't get to go to heaven. Or if I do something good, I get to go to heaven. When you remove that and you start becoming depolarized when you're in the middle, that's because you're opening your root chakra, basically. You're starting to get there. And then you start moving up to the next one, I believe, is the moon, which is connected to your sacral, which also helps with your passion and all that later on. But point is, I talked about the Earth Star chakra, which is a chakra technically below your feet. To me, it's more about the earth, energy from the earth, connecting to the earth energy. So when you open your root chakra, you connect to earth, Venus, the element of Venus, Saturn exalted in Libra, basically. Anybody who puts their feet on the ground, whether they know it or not, is going to get the negative ions. That's not what I'm talking about for the healing. Everybody can do that. What I'm talking about is there's information, there's channeling, there's things that open up once you open that root chakra. You can't do these things until you do that. And it could be debated then, okay, well, you said your grandmother was born with powers and she never did this shit. Well, maybe she did. Maybe she did it unknowingly. Maybe some people are just born with that open, depending on their placements. I don't know. Like I said, seventh sister of a seventh sister. 7 is tied to the Saturn number. Does that mean her earth or her root chakra came already open? Maybe they were all open. Maybe there are people that have them all open, and that's why they are in tune with those abilities. Maybe as a child, this is going back a long time, they didn't have shoes, and she was always on the fucking ground, and she believed in what she believed in so wholeheartedly, and it was, in line with whatever had to be, whatever. I don't know what to tell you about that. That's an area of expertise that I don't think anybody would be able to prove. I know the number 7 and Saturn and all that has probably something to do with it. But once again, can you prove it? No. But do I believe it? Yeah. But anyways, that's just another correspondence with Saturn and Libra being connected to Venus, because Saturn does well in any of the Earth signs, Taurus, what's the other one, Capricorn or Sagittarius? I can't remember which one they are. I get the Capricorn and Sagittarius, I start getting confused, and I have to go to the one after that or the one before that to figure it out. So water is always the end, so Pisces, and then it goes into Sagittarius, I believe, after that. So Sagittarius would be air, and then Capricorn would be fire, and then Libra was before that. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting all fucked up. But the point of my story, what I'm trying to go on with, is because I'm so far off the whole Adam and Eve story and all that, is Saturn, when it's in Libra, it's the reason they call it exalted is because Saturn is Father Time. He's the judge. Judge not lest you be judged, and you got to leave that judging for someone else. And really, that judge is within everybody, basically, and that's why if you're depolarized, you won't judge yourself, you won't judge anybody else. And when Saturn's in Libra, Saturn is, now I'm not saying Saturn is polarized or depolarized, but I'm just using a metaphor. When Saturn's in Libra, that exalted, what that means is it's depolarized, it's non-judgmental. That's why it likes being there. Anywhere else, it has in place restrictions, and it does put restrictions on you in that placement until you figure it out. Of course, that's what all this is. But from all the signs, that's its favorite place to be, because, well, Libra is the scales, it's justice, it's balance, it's, right and wrong, it's all those things. It's, the scales are right in there. You got to keep the scales balanced. And when you add that Earth to positive Saturn as the air element, and you add the negative element of Earth there, then now it's neutral. It's neutralized itself out. But anyways, I got a lot more to say about all this. I'm going to get into it a little more in depth, and I'm going to bring it back to the whole Adam and Eve story and about your mind and what's important and what's not important. But I just wanted to throw that out there because, I just wanted to throw that out there while it was fresh in my head, because I hadn't wrote it down. I wrote it down as I was just saying it now. That's why there's a lot of ums and ohs and me going, But I hope you enjoy these clips and the rest of the show.
All right. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I thought my headset was on before I just played that clip. That was the rest of the yesterday clip I wanted to play, which kind of suits and fits today's stuff a little bit. But I didn't have my headset on, so I don't know how loud I was. So I probably wasn't loud enough. Anyway, so what I was saying was I wanted to play this first, the clip from yesterday, and then I'm going to put on Kabbalah, the Great Work of Self-Transformation. Just, I think, about 19 pages left. I don't know how long it's going to be. I actually didn't do the math, like I said, if I do. But I can't see it being longer than half an hour. And if it is, then I might just cut it off before it just gets too redundant. But I do want to give everybody the first whole Neophyte grade. And I also said that every night until the book is done, or I'm going to do the next grade Zelter, just in case people have already done the Neophyte grade and want a refresher on the next grade, or need to do it, or have already done a year and a day and think they're already done the Neophyte. They listen to the whole Neophyte and they're like, oh, I've done all this more or less, whatever the case may be. I'll give you the next grade and possibly a grade I'm on. I may not go further than that, but it's going to be on at night. So if you're waiting for that, it's going to be on tonight, probably 11 or 12. And then I'm going to come on and talk about Rosicrucianism and why I'm playing this clip on here. Now, originally, I found this through Frater Xavier once again. Now, I thought about playing his video, but I really don't want to keep doing that because I want people to go look at his page and support him. I don't want them to just, oh, Corey's going to put all his shit on eventually, which I probably would, because I think his information is so important that I like drawing my own conclusions, giving you my perspective, and giving you all the insights that I got from what he said, and listening to him, and then me is going to give you your own insights. So, he gave me one insight. From there, I got my own, so I have 2 insights now. And then when I say it to you, Slimes, I develop a third. So then you're getting like 4 insights, and you're going to develop your own, and it's just going to keep expanding outwards, because there's no right or wrong answer. But, so I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to play the full-length clip on here, and it's pretty lengthy. I don't know. I know it's over an hour, but I don't know how long it is. But he goes into so much. He gives you a background about, and I know there's some stigma and maybe some bad press about Rosicrucianism and all that being tied to the church and shit like that. And once again, Rosicrucianism is not a church thing. It's not a Christ thing. It's not a Jesus thing. It's not a religious thing. This is the initiation into Rosicrucian. It's about connecting your chakras. It's about learning how to, he actually gives steps in it. First step is looking for spiritual knowledge, basically. And he goes into how that's important because, he doesn't say what I say, but, when you start looking into spiritual stuff, it starts breaking down your own paradigms, your own programming, and you realize what you've been told isn't true. So it's kind of like the first step I talked about. He also says the same thing. Now, he doesn't use fear-based media or anything like that, but in our day and age, because this is some years old, I want to say 20 to 30 years old, and that's another thing I want to point out, is anything new age is not fucking new. It's all old. Witchcraft, that's what I like about witchcraft, because witchcraft is old stuff, and new age is adopting it and putting things in there and pretending it's new, maybe, and stuff like this. Rudolf Steiner was big into Rosicrucianism. He was one of the biggest voices. He's going to say this on here as well. And I have a ton of Rudolf Steiner's books if anybody wants any of them. Sophia is a name. My first car I named Sophia. I always wanted to name my daughter Sophia, but because when I met my wife, I already named my car Sophia and shit like that, and I always change it like Sophia or Sophia, but it's always the same word. And I don't know why. I was always obsessed with that word, to be honest. And studying Rudolf Steiner, Sophia is kind of like this divine feminine. I'm not really going to get into that. That's a video for another time. But it's also derived from philosophia. Philosophy, kind of a lot of what I'm kind of doing. So all the dots got connected pretty cool for me in that area when I realized that, studying all the Rudolf Steiner stuff and all that. But anyway, so he goes by the first step is doing that, because once you get a bunch of spiritual knowledge, do a spiritual, when you start doing studying spirituality and the science of spirituality, alchemy, different things like that, it doesn't matter what it is. I think the more you learn, the better, but you should be learning as you're doing a curriculum, as you're doing an initiation. You do a bit of studying at first, but you're going to be drawn to something. and you're still going to want to keep looking because you might not want to commit, or you might not have the dedication or the discipline to start yet, but you should really try to say, fuck it, I'm going to start. I gave you Franz Barden, and I told you it's free on YouTube. I give you the links. It's in my fucking YouTube channel. Listen to that book and start it. Or I just gave you the Neophyte. I'm finishing it now, of the one I use, Frater Xavier used. If you don't like that, well then go study some Wicca, because Frater Xavier says it's less discipline. I don't know about that. I think Wicca, or witchcraft in general, depending on what you pick, basically hits on all the same things, just from a different point of view. But anyways, you should be studying these things, but practicing and starting some kind of curriculum, some kind of magical curriculum, because these vanishings you have to do, this middle pillar you have to do, setting up your altar, getting ready, calling the archangels all the time. This is important, from if there's demons around or negative spirits around you, for all the curses you did, for all the bad karma, for getting sat on your side, it's all going to help with that. So the sooner you start, the sooner your life's going to change. All right? But once again, you can't stop. You got to keep doing it once you start. So that's why, witchcraft might be better if you're not calling on the archangels and fucking with these things, and but you still kind of are. So, and arguably witchcraft, there might be more danger. If you're not a solitary practitioner, not really fucking with too many people, then you're not going to have many chances of people fucking back with you. But anyway, so that's he goes into that. The first step is doing that. And to me, when I hear that, it's like, okay, well, you're putting in the software in your mind to run this new program. You're breaking down the old programs by saying, this is my new truth. I no longer believe in heaven and hell and the Jesus version of Christ and all this shit. My new belief is now that, this can be heaven or this can be hell, and there's spiritual beings all around me. So to connect to these spiritual beings, I need to do the research to figure out how to do that. So you're putting in the software into your head. Once you get that software in your head, the second step is you start, your third eye can start working, or you can start hearing things, seeing things with your third eye, or he talks about kinesthetic learning is learning through feeling. You have the visual learning, right? See it. Some people can just see something and start doing it. Some people have to learn on the job. They have to learn, through doing it. Well, that's more like hands-on, right? So there's visual, and there's the visual learning, and then there'd be the hands-on learning. But the kinesthetic, whatever that is, when I heard that word, it reminded me of cancer. Kinesthetic. Anyways, it reminded me of cancer. And when he said feeling, I was like, holy fuck. Well, feeling emotion, right? And it's basically, then I really resonated with that, being, like how I say I feel like I'm an empath. Well, I learned that way. But anyways, after that first step, that second step starts getting developed, which is kind of like what I said about your root chakra. When you open that root chakra, you have that connection to earth, and then things can start coming through you. Well, it's the same concept. He's telling you that when you start studying this stuff, you're putting these programs in your brain that these spirits and these things exist. The positive and the negative, two poles, we're trying to be in the middle. So we can get these answers from both these poles. We can get connections from both these poles. But you can't get this spiritual insight unless you have a connection, unless you have the software put in there. And that's very similar to what I said about when you start picking a deity. You pick Hecate or Thoth. You tell Thoth you want to channel him. You want him to give you wisdom. You give him candles and offerings. You learn all about Thoth. You start studying Thoth. You learn all the things he's good at. Whenever Thoth decides to come through you, or you put enough software programming in your mind, then he's going to start coming through you because you did that. Well, it's the same. That's kind of similar with the deity. That's what happens when you choose a deity. It's kind of like picking your radio station. I want to listen to classical. I want to listen to country. I want to listen to punk. I want to listen to rock. I want to listen to rap. Well, that's your different deities or your different branches of spirituality. It could be just a deity and you just want to embody all of that deity or learn everything that deity has to teach you. Or it could be ceremonial witchcraft. It could be ceremonial magic or a bigger version of witchcraft or whatever. It could be, all learning about Sophia, the Rudolf Steiner. But anyways, he gets into so many different things that it's such a good perspective. And I just want to show everybody that the things I'm telling you are true and it's how I perceive it and it's how it helped me. But it's not the only way to see anything because there's not one way to see everything. And the more different things that you can put together, saying, well, that's kind of what Corey said, but he said it in a different way. How can it be both? Well, it can be both. It can be both, all, and it can be none. If it's none, then you'll never get anything. But the point is, if you want to start channeling, let's say you try to do automatic writing, it's not working yet. Well, if you're not studying certain spiritualities or you don't have those beliefs inserted in you yet, then they're not going to come through you yet. Because if they do come through you, you're either going to think it's just you're super smart, and you're not going to give them the credit or know who's giving it to you, and then they're going to stop coming to you. So there's no point even starting, because they know they're just going to have to stop. Or, you're going to think it's of the devil, or it's going to be skewed, or it's not going to be accurate, or, there's so many things that can come into play there. But you first have to do the spiritual study, basically. And to me, like I said, your initiation starts whenever you start going down the rabbit hole. You have to sometimes, not always, I'm not saying this is always the case, but in our day and age, at this point in time, right now, most people getting to this, I want to say, I can't use an absolute, but so let's just say 8 times out of 10, it's going to be fear-based media. It's either going to be the chemtrails or the GMOs or the vegan diets or the fluoride in your water, or something about the president or reptilians or aliens, something doomsday prediction, something like that. It's going to catch your eye and bring you into it. So everybody, that's what happened to me. My father-in-law was talking about in the scriptures. It says church and state are going to be one at some point, and everything else has happened in the scriptures already, because he's a hardcore Christian, but he was going to a New Baptist church or something like that. And I'm like, well, that happens for 2 reasons. And this is before I was even in any of this. I said, that happens for one of 2 reasons. One, the people in power are using the Bible as their playbook and telling you, all the gullible people, basically, that, see, believe in the Bible because everything in the Bible is happening, and they're making sure it does. And the things that aren't currently happening, there's people working behind the scenes to make sure they do play out, or make sure it looks like it plays out, or are directing your thoughts to, yes, this is what's playing out, even though it's not actually playing out, which is kind of what the media's job is to do. But anyways, now I started all this before I was even in spirituality. But that made me go look it up, and it intrigued me. And even though I had the right answer, and I told him the right answer, I got fucked up for a while. But I don't regret it one bit, because I had to get fucked up. I had to break down all that old programming, all that shit, to lose my job and get my manifestations to work and be where I am right now. I'm not saying I'm rich or wealthy or I'm never going to have to work another day in my life. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is I am so much more happier and free now because of it. Sometimes you have to change. Sometimes you have to do the uncomfortable thing. If you're polarized too much positive, you're going to have to go to the opposite side. Just like if you're a reserved person and very shy, you're going to have to come out of your shell a little bit. You have to go to that other side of polarity so you can come back to the middle. And same likewise, if you're a person who shares too much, you're out there telling everybody your business, oh, you do drugs, or you sleep with this person, or going around gossiping. Well, you might need to start doing the vow of silence thing, come back to the other side of polarity, and find that balance once again, just to get back to the middle. Everything in balance. That's one of the things I can't over fucking preach. But anyways, so yeah, I'm gonna break that down a lot more after whenever I hit that clip on. First, like I said, I'm gonna play the Kabbalah book. But like I said, he talks about Rudolf Steiner. Rudolf Steiner had an institute. He talks about Buddha, Tibet. He even at the beginning gets into Elohim and how they changed Elohim being just the God, the God of the Bible. But initially Elohim was a bad force and a good force, and it was multiple beings on both sides. There's beings on the positive side, there's beings on the negative side. And Lucifer was a bright light being on one of the sides. And whenever you're in light creative thoughts, those beings can come through you. And likewise, when you're in a dark state, dark things come through you. I think I actually paused that clip and speak a little bit about that during the fucking during the Rosicrucianism thing I'm going to play for you. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, like, even in the movies about Christ, or even in the Bible, they're walking along with Christ. This may have changed, but it wasn't when I was a kid. They're walking along with Christ, and they see a man who's blind or has leprosy. I can't remember which one. And they go to Christ and like, okay, did he sin? Did his father sin? Or did he sin in a past life? Something to that effect. And right there shows you that reincarnation was always something real, always a concept real. Just like you shall not have other gods before me. Talking about he's a jealous God and all that. And it's like, well, you just admit there's other gods. Because if there's no other gods, there'd be no reason to bring up that statement. And that tells me that it's not even God saying that. That's a human telling other humans to stop believing in all these gods. Only believe this God. The guy in the clip talks about how Buddhism used to really believe in a lot of the same things that Rosicrucianism believes in. However, it kind of became like, well, they put priests there and say, I'll pray to Buddha for you. And he says, sounds familiar, which is what happened. They took all the gods, turned it into one god, and then now they're not even letting you pray to that god. They say, come to church every Sunday and we'll pray for that god for you. We'll give you some Hail Marys and some Our Fathers, and we'll forgive your sins from time to time. But for the most part, just believe in Jesus and come see us and everything will be okay. And if you need an exorcism done, I'll come and see what I can do, basically. And it's horse shit. Spirituality is something you have to do. You got to do it from the middle, though. Anyways, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play Kabbalah, Magic, Self-Work, Transformation. The remaining 19 pages or so that have to be done for the... I think Chapter 5 is the beginning chapter of the Zelter grade. It starts off with a little story, and it's actually a pretty fun, cool story. So this is just going to be basically a little, I think it goes over a middle pillar, lesser banishing, it goes over fourfold breath, it goes over everything. It basically is giving you a little small review, basically. So if you didn't watch my episode last night because you said it was a book and you shut it off, cool. Awesome, you don't have to, but this is going to be a nice chance, because it's only 19 pages long, it's going to be a nice chance to know everything that's in there, and the short version of everything that he just went over in detail, because he goes over it in pretty good detail in just these 19 pages, the adorations, everything, and the middle pillar, and the god names, and all that. And once again, if you want this book, hit me up with an email, and I'll send it to you. I have multiple copies. I have one even on my wife's phone, just in case she ever decides she wants to read it. But anyways, that being said, now let's get right into the great work of self-transformation, Kabbalah.
7 chapters on the Neophyte curriculum and a plan to be practiced for a minimum of 6 months. Daily Neophyte formula. 2. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. 3. The middle pillar. 4. Neophyte meditation additional exercises. 1. The 4 adorations. 2. Daily tarot card. 3. Silence exercises required reading. 1. First knowledge lecture from your textbook, Regardize the Golden Dawn, pages 50-59. 2. The Tree of Life, by Israel Regardai. 3. The Mystical Kabbalah, by Dion Fortune. 4. The Sacred Magic of Ancient Egypt, by Rosemary Clark. 5. C1. The Enterer of the Threshold, from your textbook, pages 331-362-6. C3: The Symbolism of Initiation of Candidate, from your textbook, pages 363-375. Written assignments. 1. Outline of the Neophyte Ritual. 2. Diary assignments. 3. Magical Motto. 4. Compendium of God's Projects. 1. Labeling Tree of Life. 2. Neophyte Temple Diagrams Optional Implements. 1. The Rope. 2. The Lamp. 3. The Censer. 4. The book Neophyte Curriculum details daily Neophyte formula. Perform this series of rituals once per day in the order presented below, one right after the other. The only thing you need for this is a private, clear space in which to stand, about 8 or more feet across in length and width. A simple padded chair, one that is healthy for posture, will also be necessary for your daily ritual by the time you reach the next grade. The idea for doing the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram and the middle pillar exercise together is not a new one. It comes from Israel Regardai's The Middle Pillar, originally published in 1938. 1. The fourfold breath. Stand, sit, or lie comfortably. It is not necessary to enter a state of deep relaxation. Merely allow your tensions to depart as much as they will. Close your eyes and visualize the skin on your body. Consider the millions of pores all over it. Notice your breath, and begin to see that the pores expand with each inhalation and exhalation, letting air in and out of the body. Feel the air penetrating and dissolving into the deepest recesses. 2. Begin to do the fourfold breath, as described below, while maintaining the visualization of air entering and exiting your body through the pores in the skin. With each in-breath, breathe into the belly first, feeling it expand as deeply as the lower abdomen. Gradually, as the lungs fill, allow the chest to expand as well, all of the way to the top of the rib cage, such that the shoulders almost lift slightly. In this manner, breathe into the count of 4, hold the breath for 4 counts without blocking the throat, breathe out to the count of 4, hold, without blocking the throat for 4 counts, and repeat. When counting to control the breath, it is not necessary to proceed at a certain speed. It is the breath pattern itself that is most important. Proceed as slowly as you feel is appropriate. 3. Do this exercise for as long as you like, but maintain it for at least 5 minutes before daily ritual work. When the visualization becomes comfortable to maintain without much concentration, extend the porous nature of your skin into the depths of the body. See the flesh and bone as porous through and through, like a sponge. Feel the air wafting gently through the depths of your being, nourishing every cell from within. Neophyte 7172 Chapter 4. If you feel dizzy or ill from the abundance of oxygen, stop and begin the ritual again after you have recovered. Over time, the dizziness will no longer occur, replaced instead by a sense of relaxed well-being or bliss. 2. The Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. Perform this as detailed in Chapter 2. Use the visualization at the beginning of this ritual and combine it with what you have learned in the mythology section of this chapter. Expand your body to fill that great chasm that opened up within the restless light of the All-Mind. Identify with the universe that occupies that chasm. Know that you are, in your ordinary state of consciousness, a miniature reflection, a microcosm, of that macrocosm. This is an example of how ritual dramatizes myth, connecting you to higher levels of consciousness. As you float in the midst of primordial space, know that beyond its boundary resides the limitless divine light. The sphere of brilliance that descends to the crown of our head is an extension of that light. 3. The middle pillar. The procedure for this essential Golden Dawn exercise appears here much as Israel Regardai revealed it in his book The Middle Pillar. You can perform this exercise standing or lying down within your circle. If you stand, turn around clockwise and face west for the middle pillar. If you lie down in your circle, point your head east and your feet west. Direct your attention to the sphere of light about an inch above the crown of your head. It is about half the diameter of a basketball, and all subsequent spheres you visualize will be the same size. Vibrate the Hebrew God name, Eheih, pronounced Ehyeh. Feel the vibration as though it comes from that sphere. Feel the whole universe harmonize with the sound. Vibrate it a total of 4 times. See a beam of light descend into the throat and form a sphere there of white light. Vibrate. YHVHELOHIM, pronounced YAHWHLOHEM 4 times. This is the God name associated with Doth, the shadowy non-sapphire of the Tree of Life that you will learn about in your required reading for this grade. See the beam of light descend into the center of the...
So the first one would be Yod. The first one would be Ehyeh. You say that 3 times. Second one is Yod He Vod He Elohim. Say that 3 times. And this one he says for the next part, do the E-A-O, letter Y, letter A, letter O. I've used that. It works. I've also used Yod He Vod He Elah Vadath. Yod He Vod He Elah Vadath. You can look this stuff up on YouTube and they'll give you the spelling, pronunciations, and all that. And like I said, I can give you the book. And then after that, it's Shaddai El Kai. It says Chai, it's C-H-A-I, the last word, but it's Shaddai El Kai. And then the last one is Adonai Haaretz. Adonai Haaretz.
Adonaiharetz, meaning Lord of the Earth, pronounced Adonai Haaretz. Now visualize and feel the whole pillar of light traversing the height of your body. Feel it firmly rooted in the void over your head and firmly planted in the earth beneath your feet. Light is the essence of manifestation. It is carried forth into manifestation via darkness. Feel the density of your body showing forth the brilliance within, like darkness bringing forth light. Turn the attention to the sphere at the feet. Inhale as you draw a shimmering stream of white light up in an arc along the right side of the body and into the sphere overhead. Pause as it disappears into the brilliance. Then exhale as you allow it to stream down the left side of the body and into the sphere at the feet. Repeat this cycle slowly 3 more times, for a total of 4 rounds. Perform the same circulation of the light again, drawing it this time up the back and down the front of the body 4 times. Neophyte 73-74 Chapter 4. Then draw the energy up through the center of the body into the sphere over the head. Pause for a moment and then allow the energy to explode from above like a fountain and rain down into the sphere at the feet. Do this circulation 4 times or more, as desired. See the energy of the middle pillar expand gently, permeating an oval-shaped space around your body. Feel yourself floating in this light. The foundation of your being is pure brilliance, on which you are suspended. Remain in this state for up to 20 minutes. Allow all thoughts and tensions to be consumed or extinguished by the brilliance. 4. Neophyte meditation. This meditation comes from your textbook, Regardize the Golden Dawn, page 52. You may wish either to stand or to sit in your chair in the middle of the circle. If you do either, face east, or, if you have been lying down for the middle pillar, you may continue to do so. Let the neophyte consider a point as defined in mathematics having position but no magnitude, and let him note the ideas to which this gives rise. Concentrating their faculties on this, as a focus, let him endeavor to realize the immanence of the divine throughout nature, in all her aspects. Additional exercises. The 4 adorations. This exercise comes from the beginning of Israel Regardi's book, The 1-Year Manual. He presents them there as an ideal way to begin the discipline of ritual mysticism. Do these simple rituals at the assigned times. They affirm your connection to the journey of the sun through the heavens. The solar logos is central to the Golden Dawn. The sun corresponds to Tiferet, which is the first sphere of consciousness that epitomizes adeptship. In these exercises, you begin to learn how to zero in on that principle by acknowledging the solar disk in its varying aspects. These exercises also introduce you to the symbolism of ancient Egypt, in which the sun was usually the primary focus. The written assignment for this grade, the Compendium of Gods, will require you to do research at your library, online, or in your assigned reading to acquaint yourself more with the Egyptian deities referenced in this exercise. In-depth study will repay you very well. In order to do these adorations effectively, you must perform the Neophyte signs. These are presented in the teachings of the Golden Dawn as secret gestures that exemplify the spirit of the grade. The Neophyte signs are the most important of all the grade signs in the outer order. There are 2 of them, the sign of the Enterer and the sign of silence, and the second completes the first. The sign of the Enterer. Stand erect. With your palms facing downward, draw your hands up the sides of your body until they point, fingers forward, at either side of your head. Step forward with your left foot and thrust your arms forward. This sign assists you in sending your energy forward toward an object of adoration. It identifies you with that object, making a connection. The connection presumably can remain open even after the sign is completed. The sign of silence. The sign has the effect of withdrawing the energy projected in the sign of the Enterer and ending your identification with the object of adoration. It is also called the sign of Horus, or Harpocrates, and its significance as such is endless. Standing upright, bring your left index finger to your lips as though telling someone to be quiet. Simultaneously stamp your left foot, gently and firmly. Ra, at dawn, or upon rising, face east, give the sign of the Emperor, and say, Hail unto thee, who art Ra in thy rising, even unto thee who art Ra in thy strength, who travellest over the heavens in thy bark at the uprising of the sun. Tahuti standeth in his splendour at the prow, and Rahura beateth at the helm. Hail unto thee from the abodes of night. Then give the sign of silence. Hathor, at noon, face south, give the sign of the Emperor, and say, Hail unto thee who art Hathor in thy triumphing, even unto thee who art Hathor in thy beauty, who travellest over the heavens in thy bark at the mid-course of the sun. Tahuti standeth in his splendour at the prow, and Rahura beateth at the helm. Hail unto thee from the abodes of the morning. Neophyte 75-76 Chapter 4 Then give the sign of silence. Tum, at sunset, face west, give the sign of Emperor, and say, Hail unto thee who art Tum in thy setting, even unto thee who art Tum in thy joy, who travellest over the heavens in thy bark at the downgoing of the sun. Tahuti standeth in his splendour at the prow, and Rahura beateth at the helm. Hail unto thee from the abodes of day. Then give the sign of silence. Kefra, at midnight, or upon going to sleep, face north, give the sign of the on-terror, and say, Hail unto thee who art Kefra in thy hiding, even unto thee who art Kefra in thy silence, who travellest over the heavens in thy bark at the midnight hour of sun. Tahuti standeth in his splendour at the prow, and Rahura beateth at the helm. Hail unto thee from the abodes of evening. Then give the sign of silence. Daily tarot card. Obtain a traditional weight tarot deck, such as Lo Scarabio's Universal Tarot. Every day, in the morning, shuffle the deck. Intent to draw a card that represents an important spiritual issue to focus on for the day. Think of nothing else but that intention as you shuffle. Draw a single card. Look at it openly for several moments without analyzing or thinking on what you see. Allow yourself to become excited or moved by the image, intentionally amplifying whatever impression you get, if any. You may choose to imagine yourself peering through the card as though through a window or doorway, or you may see yourself breathing the atmosphere of the scenery in and out. It would be acceptable at this point to occasionally use this single daily card as a divination. As you shuffle the cards, ask for insight about a current situation. Let the card sit out in the open all day or all night. Come back to it later. Reflect on it again and see if any new insights have come to the surface in regard to the issue or to your current stage of development. Silence exercises. Silence exemplifies the spirit of the Neophyte grade. Not only is protection from outside forces important, but containment is also a key. Not only are you establishing a barrier that protects your ritual work from outside forces, but you also are learning to keep your aspirations carefully focused within. The following exercises assist with this process. 1. Restricting the topic. For 1 month, preferably the first month of your practice, do not talk with anyone about the following topics: magic, occultism, philosophy, psychology, mysticism, religion, or similar subjects. 2. Listening. For 1 month, say very little in your conversations. Become a good listener. When the time comes for you to speak, instead of vocalizing your opinions and experiences, inquire more about the person you are talking to. Then continue to listen. When asked about your own views, reveal as little as possible and kindly return the conversation to the other person's interests. Required reading. There is a reading list for each of the grades. It is designed not only to educate, but to tune in the mind to a certain level of existence. It is not intended as a suggestion for other kinds of ritual or meditation work. Read all of the assigned books or selections in the list of your current grade, but do not do any of the exercises that you find in them. I will stress here again that in order to gain the benefit of this curriculum, All rituals, meditations, or other spiritual exercises must be limited to those of the grade work as I presented. There will no doubt be several practices that you will come across in your reading that will tempt you to wander away from the work at hand. However, it is necessary to maintain a focus on your current level of development and to guard against the tendency to drift from one entertaining practice to another. This curriculum does, on the other hand, encourage curiosity. If anything interests you, by all means, read about it, research it, or write a book about it if you must. But do not explore it via ritual, meditation, or visualization exercises. There will be times when this restriction feels like a burden, but if you persevere until the Outer Neophyte 77-78 Chapter 4 order grades are completed, your freedom to practice as you please will be restored and will have been transformed. How do you define freedom now? You will not see it the same way when you are done. Written assignments. 1. Outline of the Neophyte, 0 = 0, ritual. From your textbook, the study of this elaborate lodge ceremony will quicken the pace of your spiritual development. That is what all of the work of the Neophyte grade in this book does, no matter what your level of actual attainment. The original Golden Dawn initiated students into its outer order via this ceremony, and the symbolism involved is fundamental to all that is done in Golden Dawn style magic. The study of this ritual for the beginner may be rough going. Perhaps not all of it will be clear to you, or perhaps you may think you understand it all already, thereby blocking your further progress. Persevere in your curiosity, and more will be revealed in time, probably long after you have completed your study in this grade. Make your outline of the ceremony as detailed as possible. You may even use your required reading, ZI, the Emperor of the Threshold, for example, to add more supporting details as you go. Here is an example of a format your outline could take. 1. Requirements A officers. 1. On the BSA. Imperator wearing the god form of Nephthys B. Cancellarius wearing the god form of, and so on, listing the officers. 2. In the Hall A. Hyrus wearing the god form of Horus B. Hejma WERINGTHEGODFORMOF 2. Open engulfed 00 grade A Kirux gives warning call. Hekaz St Bet Belloy. 1. Warns the evil and uninitiated to retire. 2. Nonas, the Krift, Water W. Ithan, Bekarch checks pat the Templies proper guarded. Before you begin, draw a diagram of the Neophyte Temple, see page 116 of your textbook, The Golden Dawn, on a full sheet of paper. Then create little squares of paper and draw on each the implements carried by the temple officers. See page 349 of your textbook for illustrations of implements. As you copy the ritual by hand, move the bits of paper around on the diagram to help you visualize the movement of the officers. The names of the officers and their implements are as follows: Hierophant, Hierophant. The I is pronounced as in the word I. Red scepter tip with a crown Hejmon, Hejmon. White wand tip with a mitre that has a cross on it Hyrus, sword Kirux, Krux. Wand of 3 colors, top to bottom, red, yellow, blue, and lantern stylists. Style ISTEEZ, Chalice de Dujas, Dar Hose, Censor Sentinel. Sword the candidate, blank. 2. Diary assignments. This is a very important practice, describing changes and feelings as you progress through the current grade. You are to make an entry every day, no matter what. This you will do even if you must write something as simple as, I don't feel like writing tonight. Begin this practice by recording the date and time, and then write your general impressions of events of the day. Other topics you may wish to report on every day are health, emotional state, and weather. Also, list the rituals and exercises you have done, along with any noteworthy impressions. For 1 month each, incorporate the topics or writing practices below into your daily entry. For 1 month, Do not use the personal pronoun I, me, my, mine, myself to refer to yourself in your writing. You may wish to extend this to other correspondences, and even to conversation, where possible. For Neophyte 7980 Chapter 4. For 1 month, include a heading called Present Moment and write a paragraph talking about how you are feeling right now, how your body feels, the sounds and odors in the room where you sit, the texture of your clothing, etc. For 1 month, every time you rise in the morning, immediately recall any dreams that you had during the night and, if any, record them briefly in your diary. When the time comes to make your journal entry for the day, reflect on these dreams. You may wish to continue recording your dreams in this manner from here on out. 3. Magical motto: create an alias. This will be the beginning of the formation of your magical personality, a separate identity that you will use to rise above the world of the 4 elements. In the original Golden Dawn, such an alias took the form of a motto read in Latin or some other language. Some examples follow. Sor VNR, Vestigia nulla retrorsum, Latin for, no traces behind. Praetor YA, Hebrew for, let there be light. Praetor DPAL, to profundis ad lucem, Latin for, from the depths to the light. 5. The salutation of Frater or Sor means brother or sister. Fellow students of the mysteries, in a tradition that stems from monasticism, refer to each other as brethren. You may choose to create a magical name in this fashion, using any language you wish, or perhaps by some other creative method. The name should represent something to which you deeply aspire. Over time, the name you adopt will take on deeper significance. Label your projects and magical tools with this motto, such as your diary, your drawings, and the optional accoutrements that you will make in future grades. 4. Compendium of Gods. After familiarizing yourself with the Neophyte ritual, take note that there are subtleties that may be further conveyed by studying the Egyptian gods that participate in it. The temple members not only play the role of the officers represented by their clothing, they each also imagine themselves clothed in the god form of a deity. The god forms are shells of magical astral substance created by the Hierophant before the ceremony begins. The officers step into these forms and assume them, waking up the qualities of the gods within their own psyches. The officer called the Hieros, for example, adopts the god form of Horus, thereby awakening courage, confidence, and earthly strength in his being. These energies are perceivable not only by the temple officers, but sometimes by the candidate. A fair knowledge of Egyptian mythology is required to understand the deeper aspects of Golden Dawn's original great initiations. If you do not feel you have a grasp of ancient Egyptian mythology, I suggest you create your compendium of gods before outlining the 0=0 ceremony. Designate a special notebook to contain your notes on the following Egyptian gods. Your assigned reading is a good place to start your research. Osiris, Isis, Hathor, Arueris, Harpocrates, Anubis, Motnath, Sakhidrahor, Tumnifthus, Kefra, the 4 sons of Horus, Set, Typhon, Apophis, Rathath, Tahuti. For this grade, fill up 1 page for each deity with the following information. Greek and Egyptian names of the god. Illustration of the deity's most common form, drawn or cut and pasted bullet force of nature to which the god corresponds. Aspects of civilization the god governs. The officer in the Neophyte ritual who wears this god form. The part of the candidate's psyche the god might represent. Various titles given to the god in Egyptian and Hermetic literature. Position S on the tree of life where the god would be most at home. Neophyte 8182 Chapter 4. You may wish to continue adding to this book throughout your future studies as your knowledge deepens. If you like, add the gods of other pantheons that interest you. Projects 1. Labeling the Tree of Life. Make multiple photocopies of the blank Tree of Life diagram that appears on the opposite page. On one of the sheets, Label the Sephiroth in Hebrew letters, using black ink, and number the Sephiroth in the paths 1 through 32. The Hebrew names appear in the First Knowledge lecture in your textbook, The Golden Dawn, pages 50-59. The Sephiroth in paths you will find numbered on the diagram on page 62. Place this diagram in a special notebook, which you will entitle The Book of Trees. Keep the remaining blank copies handy in your Book of Trees so that you can record more systems of Tree of Life correspondences as you progress. Some examples of these systems are metals, gems, astrological planets, archangels, scents of incense, parts of the soul, signs of the zodiac, and letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Also, your ongoing additions, one very important, the painted tree will be added to this book in each of the elemental grades. 2. Neophyte temple diagrams. After you have finished the assigned reading from your textbook, make 2 diagrams of the Neophyte temple, but do not label any of the stations. On the first diagram, label the positions in which the Egyptian god forms are formulated. The second diagram is a little more complex. Draw a circle around each of the following positions and label them as shown. Position circled by Hierophant, the white pillar, the black pillar space between Hegemon and central altar, and Hyros in one large circle labeled Tiferet Netzach Had Esad Malk, the Tree of Life, Neophyte 83-84, Chapter 4. These Tree of Life correspondences will become more significant as you study. Add to them the diagram you drew for outlining exercise, and keep them in a notebook of drawings, which you will entitle diagrams. You will add more drawings to this notebook in later grades. Optional implements. It is not necessary in this curriculum to have an elaborate temple filled with pillars, and other props. If you have such a place already, this course of study requires you to clear it out. Put your magical gear away and start fresh, unclote red on this new curriculum of transformation. If you are fortunate enough to have a room that you devote to your daily ritual, make sure that it is empty and that it is used for no other purpose than the great work. You may even wish to scrub it thoroughly and recarpet or repaint. Gradually, as you progress through the grades, you may again add certain optional features if you choose. There are 4 pieces of equipment you will be allowed to use at this point, but they are optional. 1. The robe. This must be black, representing the darkness from which you are extracting light. Traditionally, members of the outer order wear black and members of the inner order wear white. It would be best if your robe were floor length with a deep-set cowl for a hood and large bell sleeves. There are numerous websites on which you can purchase a magical robe custom designed for your measurements. If your size is small or average, you may even be able to obtain a robe locally at a New Age store. 2. The lamp. This normally hangs from the center of the ceiling on a chain. It should hang high enough so that you can stand beneath it and not bump your head. Make sure that it has a hood so that the heat of the candle does not rise directly into the ceiling, creating the risk of fire. The candle within should be white. If you are currently looking for a lamp, the right materials can be hard to find and have no illumination for your optional temple room yet. It is permissible in the meantime to use 4 white candles, putting 1 each into one of the 4 directions: east, south, west, and north. These can be stood on the floor. Make sure you keep your robe away from the candle flames so that it does not catch fire. 3. The censer. Experiment with different incense scents for now, but I recommend keeping on hand at all times some sandalwood and frankincense. These you can bum during ritual. Scent, employed habitually over time, is a powerful way of bringing your focus to specific spiritual matters. For now, set the censer anywhere in the room, but preferably in the east. Certain scents traditionally correspond to certain invoked forces, and burning the appropriate incense for a particular exercise is a powerful practice. Following is a list of correspondences between scents and forces. Gradually obtain as many of these incenses as you can find so that you gain an experience of the ambience produced by each. If incense smoke is not to your liking, you can also combine scented oil with water in a potpourri simmer to diffuse the scent throughout a room. Tree of Life 1. Kether. 2. Chogma 3. Bina. 4. Chaste. 5. Jebora 6. Tiferet 7. Netzach 8. Had. 9. Esad. 10. Malkoth Elements Fire W8 Rare Earth Scent Sandalwood Muskmar Cedar Basil Dragon's Blood Frankincense Sea Ernanlon Rose Lavender Jasmine Patchouli Scent Sea Ernanlon Lily Sandalwood Patchouli Neophyte 85-86 Chapter 4. 4. The book. This is perhaps the most indispensable of the Hermeticist tools. Find yourself an ideal multi-ring binder, one that is small enough to hold open in one hand, so that you can read from it during ritual and make gestures with the other arm. You may wish to write or type up the rituals required for this grade and place them in this book so that you can recite them during ritual, that is, until you know them by heart. As time goes by, add various magical formulae to this book. The rings will make it possible for you to change the order of your rituals. Keep the most pertinent ones on top. The rings also make it possible for you to throw out old rituals that you have outgrown and add new ones to suit your current development. Please note, though, that adding a ritual book to your temple accoutrements at this time does not license you to practice rituals other than the ones outlined in your current grade. With these optional implements, you can put on your ritual robe every day, preferably at a set time, and enter your ritual space, light your incense and lamp or blaze, hold the open book in your left hand, and commence your ritual work. Neophyte checklist. There is no required.
Perform the Neophyte formula of rituals daily. Though I have completed the silence exercises. Though I now make a diary entry every day. Though I have completed the diary assignments. DIL current logging with the eternal meditation. Though I have done the
Sorry, guys.
First knowledge lecture. Though I have read the mystical Kabbalah. Though I have read the tree of life.
Alright, sorry about that. I'm just going to stop that now. I may start off with that for the next one. But anyways, let's get into what we want to get into today. Now, I'm not going to play the full thing for you now because I do want to break it down a little bit. So I'm going to play half now and half later. And I'll just talk about it right now. So expect another episode for sure tonight for the next grade of this. I'm going to post later, not right now, but I'm going to post a link for the PDF somehow for you guys to be able to click on that, and it'll take you to where you can find the PDF. And I'll try to leave instructions if it doesn't automatically open the PDF for you from whatever device you're doing it from. Now I'm doing it from my Mac, so hopefully it'll still be able to do it for you on whatever system you're doing it on. And I'm also going to try to that's my homework for today. I'm going to post the book that I'm putting on here for you so you can find it. So the things that didn't make sense with the way he said it, and this way there's diagrams in there and the reading list and all that for you. Everything is there. They actually give you a picture of the tree of life and those incense things he said. He said Yesod, Malkuth, all those things. Well, beside it, after when he went through all the actual herbs like dragon's blood and basil and all that, those are actually beside that because the way it speaks, it does what it does. It does row and then the next row. Maybe I could figure that out, but not likely. So I'll put the links up for you to find that book and then the actual reading that needs to go along with that. Now the goal, I forget which one he talks about, but it's one of the ones. The Golden Dawn, I think, is the textbook. You don't have to read that one front to back or anything. He gives you specific places in there to read. I think eventually you do end up reading the whole thing. Now the other ones are for your mythologies and all that, which you can also research specific things for specific criteria that you need to know. However, I read those books. I have those books. So if you want to take the legwork out. But anyways, that's going to be my homework after I do the things I have to do. I'm going to come on here. I'm going to find all those books because I already have all those books. They're all saved in my thing. Now, so it's just a matter of going back and doing a reversed, typing it in and seeing if it leads me to it. I used to use this one site that was kind of like a Facebook, but in a different country. I don't know where. And I got a lot of books from there, a lot of brand new ones that you can't get anywhere else. So if that's the case, I don't have that program on my computer, and hopefully none of these books are from there. However, I do still have all those books. Thank God for the cloud, man. But anyways, here we go. Rosicrucianism. Hope you enjoy. I'll be on after to break it down.
Tonight's topic is going to be on the Rosicrucian science of initiation. Some of you are new to me, and some of you I know from previous events. And what's different about tonight's event is we're really going to be focusing on trying to give a sense of the Rosicrucian system of initiation. There are many different spiritual systems in the world that have different types of initiation programs that a person goes through. And the Rosicrucian system is one that's been very influential in the West, but actually is sometimes hard to get information about what their actual system of development is. So we're going to try to present that tonight. You might have noticed that we have around in various locations some of the classical depictions of initiation processes coming from European alchemy and from the Rosicrucian tradition. And these often present in an allegorical form the different types of stages one goes through for spiritual development. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Rob Gilbert. I've been involved in Rosicrucian studies for about 25 years. When I got out of the Marine Corps in the mid-'80s, I began an intensive search of different spiritual traditions, and was particularly fascinated by European Rosicrucianism and the work of Rudolf Steiner. And having looked into many, many different Rosicrucian groups and teachers, it's my personal opinion that Rudolf Steiner's work is the most advanced Rosicrucian work ever to be made publicly available. There's, of course, always this hidden stream of Rosicrucianism that winds through Western European history, but for something that actually broke the surface and there was a public teaching of, it's really Rudolf Steiner's work that went into some of the deeper waters. So first thing we want to talk about tonight with this concept of the Rosicrucian science of initiation is what do we actually mean by initiation or an initiate? Because the terms are used very generally in modern metaphysical circles. But if you look at people that are being presented as initiates, they are often extremely different. One technical part of this is actually the structure of their consciousness and the structure of their subtle bodies can be quite different from one to another, although they're being presented as initiates within different systems. So one of the discernment points that we have within the Rosicrucian system is that there are three different aspects of initiation or becoming an initiate. In one of these, what is actually being illuminated begins with the thinking process, with actually knowing about non-physical realities, knowing about the greater spiritual realities that we come from, and the spiritual depths of oneself. This is linked to the spiritual centers inside the head. And this is also linked to the illumination of the thinking process, so that with this process we actually know consciously the structure of the spiritual worlds, how we interact with them, how they influence us on a daily basis. And within this Rosicrucian system, that would technically be known as an initiate, someone that actually understands the systems. And that's one reason why you find in so much of the classical depictions all these presentations of different types of patterns, one pattern within another, often represented within sacred geometric forms. And within Western Europe, often sacred geometric forms that hold inside of them Hebrew letters that are a representation of certain states of consciousness, spiritual beings, things of that kind. This is because in this path of illumination, we find that everything is a thought form from the mind of God, and all those thought forms have a pattern to them. And the current term that we use for understanding those patterns is sacred geometry. So sacred geometry is a universal science for understanding the patterns of creation at every level, whether it's how the different spirituals are constructed, or different ranks of spiritual beings and their consciousness, or the different subtle bodies of a human being, whatever it claims, there's a pattern to it. And so no matter what tradition you study with, they will work with sacred geometry. Because the sacred geometry at the highest level is a pure, packed thought form from the mind of God that shows you the pure pattern of everything that's manifested from it. Now, the next level is that of the clairvoyant. And from one perspective, we could say this is linked to the illumination of the heart and the feeling life. The Rosicrucians talk about a process within an initiation in which at a certain point, when the heart becomes open and unarmored, and we cultivate this feeling of unconditional love, there's an ignition of a kind of spiritual spark within the heart. And what happens then is that they describe it as an etheric rose light arises from the heart and moves up to what's commonly called the third eye center. And with that rose etheric stream, it enters into the centers in the head, that area that is technically at the third ventricle of the brain and was known as the cave of Brahma in the Indian teachings. This is a particular area that's open in the head that has a space between the pineal and pituitary glands. And as this space becomes illuminated, it leads to direct spiritual vision. This is then a clairvoyant. The clairvoyant can actually perceive non-physical realities. But depending upon the individual, they may not consciously understand the structures or discern the different things that they are actually seeing. And again, they might be different from some of the other stages that we'll talk about in a moment. So the third aspect here is that there's also the cultivation of action or of the will. And this is linked to the belly, or what in Japan they call the hara, or in Chinese alchemy they call the lower dantian, the lower will centers here. And through the action or willing form of illumination, one is able to take action esoterically. You're able to actually use non-physical realities to change things on the physical plane. Now, at the most extreme form of this, we have things like actual physical alchemy and a transmutation of one physical substance to another. But this is usually attained after going through multiple steps of being able to transform something that is less dense. And that is normally etheric energy fields. So the actual vibrational transformation of energy fields, energy healing, things of that kind, is something that you find very strongly on this path. So the person that can actually transform things using spiritual forces is referred to as the adept. Now again, this is kind of an ideal type of the different aspects of initiations or initiates. Often people have different parts of this in their own particular configuration and are stronger in one aspect or another. That gives us a bit of an overview for how this fits together. Now, everything we're going to go over tonight is to give a straight, logical progression through some of the key knowledge of how the Rosicrucians understand and practice initiation. But all these things could be approached from other angles as well. So just to give you a sense of that, there's a reason why we're emphasizing the head, the heart, and the hara. When you study classical spiritual text, you find that they divide up the aspects of the human being into different types of forces. So the actual consciousness of the human being is often referred to as the astral body, and it's related to what's often called the spiritual plane of the astral plane. Within the Rosicrucian work, you find at a certain point that the consciousness body of the human being has three centers that can be worked on and awakened. And those three centers are around the head, the heart, and the hara. And this is really a universal teaching. If you study with the Buddhist, they'll talk about the thought, speech, and action. If you study with Sufis, they'll talk about the head, the heart, and the hands. All these different traditions are working with the same concept. If you studied Chinese medicine or Chinese internal alchemy like Qigong, you'll know that they have the upper, middle, and lower dantian. They refer to these as elixir fields, because when we understand what these actually are energetically, they are a kind of spiritual elixir field that we can work in and illuminate the forces of. So, depending on where we focus on primarily, we can first begin to develop the capacity of understanding things in a conscious manner, the patterns behind them, become the initiate, or directly perceive spiritual realities, the clairvoyant, or directly manipulate the spiritual forces, hopefully for a good outcome, and that's the adept. Now for tonight's talk, I'm going to ask if people would hold any questions till the very end, and we'll have a time for questions and answers. But I want to try to go through a particular logical thought path here to try to put a few pieces together. Now, the challenge of explaining some of the more obscure aspects of Rosicrucian spiritual initiation is that some of the practices really don't make a lot of sense until you understand the context that they're within. So we have to present a little bit of the Rosicrucian view of the context of all created life and for the evolution of the human being. Now, first thing I would say about the Rosicrucian tradition is that the Rosicrucian tradition is one of the most recent of the great traditions on the planet. If you go back to the Vedic tradition in India, Tibetan tradition, etc., many others, they're very ancient. But the Rosicrucian tradition really only broke the surface in human history in the 1600s. The first Rosicrucian documents appeared in the 1600s with texts like Forma Fraternitatis in 1604 in Germany. Now, when these Rosicrucian texts first became available, one of the things that they emphasized in these texts was that the Rosicrucian organization wasn't connected to any one authoritative teacher, and it wasn't connected to any particular type of control structure. There was no institution for it. It was really a very free and independent path of modern initiation. And so one thing we're going to see tonight as we go through the presentation is that this fits within their understanding of the evolution of human consciousness, that we have attained a state today where there's actually a transition from an external human guru-based system to one in which the awakening of the human I Am presence becomes the guru and connects directly to spiritual forces without a human intermediary. That was a fundamental concept in the early Rosicrucian text. So the Rosicrucian order really became something that never had an external expression until later. In times people would found different types of Rosicrucian lodges. Many of them were quite remarkable in their time. In Germany and elsewhere, there are various types of Rosicrucian organizations in the U.S. today. But what I want to emphasize is that what we're presenting tonight are concepts related to the original European Rosicrucian impulse. It's not related to any particular central teacher, organization. We're not trying to recruit you for anything. This is really a path of direct connection to spirit by understanding spiritual processes. So it all begins understanding the whole set of processes by understanding where everything comes from. In ancient Greek times, they talked about the source of all being with the name of the One, in capital letters, the One. And this is a beautiful representation within sacred geometry that everything comes from a unified source. So within human evolution, we've gone through a certain pathway that we'll talk about in a moment, where in sacred geometry and the ancient Egyptian mysteries, they talked about the 1 becomes the 2 becomes the 4 becomes the 8. It ends up becoming the 10,000 things the Chinese talk about. But everything comes from the unified source of the One. It's all creation from the mind of God. And in the classical Western work from Greece and elsewhere, they talk about thoughts in the mind of God being the source of everything. And that's what Plato referred to as ideal types, or ideal thought forms. These are actually what construct the world. These thoughts in the mind of God take on different separate qualities and different separate functions in the world, and then they manifest through the different planes. It's understood from the classical Western Hermetic as above, so below tradition, of which Rosicrucianism is one of the most recent expressions, that the nature of the mind of God is essentially pure consciousness. Everything is based on a field of pure consciousness. You find the exact same teaching in the ancient Vedic text and many other world traditions. Consciousness is the basis. So starting from these differentiated thought forms in the mind of God at a very high level, those thought forms have within them specific patterns. The pattern of what will later become something that crystallizes into the physical world, or the nature of a spiritual being, or a spiritual process of some type. And again, that's what we refer to as sacred geometry. So to actually begin to access these packed thought forms, these very dense spiritual sources of everything in creation, again, every major tradition will teach it in terms of pure patterns, in terms of pure sacred geometry. So from that thought form pattern, sacred geometry level, it then moves down through the levels of manifestation to create everything in our world. And the first thing that it creates are the manifested beings. Now, the manifested conscious spiritual beings that surround us in invisible space all the time, and that make up the world at a much higher level. In the Western tradition, we primarily know through terms like the angelic ranks or the spiritual hierarchies. In the classical Western tradition, there was understood to be 9 different ranks of angelic beings. So we often, in general metaphysical circles or in external churches today, hear about a few of them. We hear about the angels and the archangels, occasionally in archai. The Elohim is sometimes talked about, but not often clearly in its original form as the Elohim being one of the different spiritual ranks or hierarchies. Because the term Elohim in the original Hebrew has a suffix im, Elohim, and im in Hebrew is actually a plural suffix. It means the Elohim are a group of spiritual beings. When we have the translation from Hebrew into English of the book of Genesis, back in 1980 I lived in Israel and studied Hebrew at a kibbutz. One of the things that was discussed is that when you get these translations from the text, the term Elohim is translated in English as God, and it seems to refer to the unitary Godhead. But the original term Elohim refers to a plurality of beings that are not the unified Godhead, but in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth, is the beginning of Genesis. And so what that shows is there's a rank of spiritual beings that were directly indicated that did the creation process. And so from the Elohim, you then have other hierarchies we hear very little about, because their state of consciousness is very elevated, but they're known in the classical text. And these are the dynamis, Kyriatetes, throne, cherubim, and seraphim. 9 different ranks. And it's understood that these beings were created in a particular type of cyclical process in space and time that in sacred geometry is represented as a spiral form. So if you look at the form of a spiral, you have the completion of a circle, but as the circle is moving, it's moving either up or down. And so as the spiral is moving, it's completing a circle here, but now it's at one higher octave, and another end of the cycle on a higher octave. And so this becomes the ladder, the Jacob's ladder, the ladder of lights, the ladder of the angelic beings, spoken of in the classical text. The significance of this for us is that these different beings are of different levels of maturity, have different levels of the expansion of their consciousness, and different possibilities for action. So what is sometimes treated in very intellectual, abstract ways in dealing with angelic hierarchies was understood in the initiation circles as beings one directly interacts with all the time. They invisibly guide and affect our consciousness and life every minute of every day, but we don't perceive it, just as we don't normally have organs to perceive non-physical realities until they're developed. So again, what the significance of this is that as the Godhead has created the world, the thought forms at a very high level are given a part of the consciousness of the Godhead that in classical texts is sometimes described as an ocean of fire. So if we think of the pure consciousness of the Godhead as an ocean of fire, then there is one flame, one spark detached from that ocean of consciousness and given to the conscious spiritual beings that make up what in the West we refer to as the angelic ranks or the spiritual hierarchies. Now this is very important because it's that spark from the Godhead that is essential to understand the Rosicrucian path of initiation, because it's about igniting that spark inside the human being. Every human being has that divine core, what in the Western system is often referred to as the I am core of self-awareness, straight from the Godhead. The thing is to uncover it and to fan the flame into full activity. So as the thoughts from the mind of God move down and we have the manifested beings, in classical texts they describe the spiritual hierarchies, they describe the angelic beings in very specific ways. Their names actually mean particular things. So if you look at the names of the archangels, Raphael means God heals. And other names like Michael mean such things as various powers within God that in the Rosicrucian tradition are expressed as such things as Michael being the direct expression of the cosmic intelligence, that the fullness of understanding that the Godhead has is actually expressed through the being of Archangel Michael. So different beings, their names actually mean something. Different teachers in esoteric circles will sometimes break this down, even according to their old Egyptian languaging. So for something like U-Ra-El, it would be broken down into the U-Ra-El, meaning literally the sun vibration God. They're all different qualities of the Godhead. And that's why in the classical text, the angels are sometimes referred to as God's messengers. And it was understood that we had to actually be clear about what beings were interacting with us Because if he does say, oh, I spoke to God, or God told me this, it's too amorphous. We don't know what being's actually speaking to us. And not all the beings are beneficial. Again, something that comes from the classical text. We'll get to that in a moment. But as we then have the manifestation from the mind of God through the angelic ranks, we then come to the point that we then have the different manifested spiritual levels. So these different consciousness levels also will then manifest as what we think of as spiritual planes. In the East, they have all kinds of different names for the different planes of existence. And in the West, we have the terms you may have heard before, with the physical plane, the etheric world, the astral plane, the causal plane, etc. And there are different ways this is divided in different systems. But essentially, these different planes of existence are actually part of the body of God, whether the body of God at a particular level of function or activity. The astral plane, for example, is really the manifested body of God at a consciousness level of a particular frequency. And so the manifestation of the spiritual levels and other beings, forces, and then the structures that manifest from the original pattern, which is spiritual, into the structures in the physical world. So things that were taught in sacred geometry about pure archetypal structure, like what the Greeks taught with the Platonic solids, the octahedron, dodecahedron, etc., they actually manifest as physical structures in things like the mineral realm. And you can see the stones that have that structure. But the key thing for the Rosicrucians is that these patterns, everything in the world comes directly from the One, from the mind of God. And then to be able to actually discern the different qualities and functions of things in the manifest world, including things like the different spiritual beings that everyone is connected to all the time, and to become conscious of those and how they affect us, there would be teachings hidden within geometric glyphs. Because again, the geometric glyph holds pure pattern information. It's a packed thought form from the mind of God of a pure pattern. So the tree of life holds a tremendous amount of embedded information. In some of our previous talks and workshops, some of you have been with us when we described the way that there are 22 paths connecting the 10 spheres on the tree of life. And those in the classical Kabbalah are described as being related to a pattern of 3, 7, and 12. We're not getting into that part of it tonight. It's tangential to what we're discussing. But just to hook it up for those of you that have been with us before, that's an aspect that's within the tree of life that actually shows us the coding pattern of anchors for energy in the human body, for the human consciousness within 3 points of the astral body, for the human life body within 7 points, and then for the human physical body within 12 locations. Just as in Chinese medicine, it's described there are 12 primary meridians. So these numbers are related to functions and the pattern from the mind of God. A huge amount is embedded in these, and different teachers can focus on completely different things from the same pattern. Because it's holographic, it's like a jewel, and different facets of all these different things. So if we take a look at what we're looking at tonight, there's another pattern that's laid within the tree of life, which is that it has 3 different pillars inside of it. Now the 3 pillars have an interesting quality to them. On the left and the right-hand pillars, which are sometimes referred to in the West as the pillars of mercy and severity, they don't go all the way up or all the way down. The only one that goes all the way up and all the way down is the central, or the middle pillar. And this is related to a very deep teaching of how to discern 3 different types of spiritual forces, or actually 3 different types of spiritual beings in the classical tradition. Now, unfortunately, this idea of discerning 3 different types of spiritual beings was primarily lost over time, so that in most external Western churches today, it's not taught anymore, unfortunately, because it was in the original tradition. And instead, things are presented only as like, there's the good spiritual beings and the bad spiritual beings. Well, the problem is, as we are created from the Godhead, the first movement from the one is into the two. It's like the first split of the egg in the mother's womb to be the 2 different parts that will then split to become the full manifest human being. So that split into 2 is actually taking the unified aspect of the Godhead, the one, and moving into 2 opposite polarities. In the Indian tradition, they talk about this being Shiva and Shakti, these archetypal yin and yang, masculine and feminine aspects. Now this is absolutely critical, because you can't say that one is good and one is bad. You can't have a purely polarized system and say that's good, that's bad. If we have male and female, which one's good and which one's bad? But this type of thinking infects everything in the Western world today, like our politics. Well, if this side is right, that side must be wrong, sort of thing. Everything is brought into this polarized dichotomy. But the original understanding was much different. If we study classical teachings like in Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about, the path of development is not to one extreme or another. It's the middle way. It's that central path, holding a balance between two different extremes. And so the same thing is true in the tree of life. We have a middle path, just like the Tibetans talk about, and then things can go off balance to one extreme or another. Do you want to be too hot or too cold? You don't want either. You want to be in the middle. But this applies to everything within spiritual development. So again, we could talk a lot about this, but I want to give you the direct application of it now as a building block toward the overall concept of Rosicrucian initiation. So one of the things that needs to be discerned with this concept of the Godhead creating the world and the different levels of manifest being that are referred to in the classical text is that there are beings that connect to the middle pillar. They go all the way up and all the way down. That means they connect to the highest levels of the Godhead, and they also connect all the way down to the level of the manifest creation. In the Western tradition, within esoteric Christianity, this is connected to the Christ or Christic beings, or within the monotheistic traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they refer to them as Michaelic beings, because Michael is considered to be the highest of the archangels. And so one of the names that is attributed to the term Michael is that the name Mikael means who is as God. And so that idea that Michael holds the quality of the Godhead, but reduced in scale to where it can be interacted with at an archangelic level. The meaning of this is that when we hold to the middle way, perfect balance in all polarities in life, then we're on the path that takes us all the way. But through free will, through the mysteries that are described in the book of Genesis and in the Kabbalah and many other traditions, where through the exercise of free will, we can choose to go off to one direction or the other and get off balance. The same thing is true for certain types of higher spiritual beings who actually have the spiritual task of being somewhat polarized and pulling us one direction or another. Now, the way that this got confused for the modern Western tradition is that some of the terms used in ancient times got to be confused together so they could no longer differentiate their meaning, which leads to a lot of confusion. So toward one hand, toward the left-hand pillar, you have spiritual beings that don't understand or really care for the physical world. They're not into that. The physical world is something that seems like a place of suffering. And many of the ancient traditions of the world were heavily influenced by these beings, with teachings of the physical world being an illusion, of the physical world being a place of suffering, get off the cycle of karma and reincarnation, etc. In the Western world, it was understood that these spiritual beings are advanced spiritual beings, more advanced than human beings. And they also have tremendous spiritual light. When one encounters them, one does not encounter a being of darkness. One encounters a being of tremendous light. And so the name given to the leader of this particular spiritual group was Lucifer, and these are Luciferic beings. Now, in most...
Battery low.
Lucifer is completely mixed up with the term Ha-Satan, or Satan, which is a dark being. A perfect balance in all polarities in life, then we're on the path that takes us all the way. But through free will, through the mysteries that are described in the book of Genesis and in the Kabbalah and many other traditions, where through the exercise of free will, we can choose to go off to one direction or the other and get off balance. The same thing is true for certain types of higher spiritual beings who actually have the spiritual task of being somewhat polarized and pulling us one direction or another. Now, the way that this got confused for the modern Western tradition is that some of the terms used in ancient times got to be confused together so they could no longer differentiate their meaning, which leads to a lot of confusion. So toward one hand, toward the left-hand pillar, you have spiritual beings that don't understand or really care for the physical world. They're not into that. The physical world is something that seems like a place of suffering. And many of the ancient traditions of the world were heavily influenced by these beings, with teachings of the physical world being an illusion, of the physical world being a place of suffering, get off the cycle of karma and reincarnation, etc. In the Western world, it was understood that these spiritual beings are advanced spiritual beings, more advanced than human beings. And they also have tremendous spiritual light. When one encounters them, one does not encounter a being of darkness. one encounters a being of tremendous light. And so the name given to the leader of this particular spiritual group was Lucifer, and these are Luciferic beings. Now, in most traditions today, this is completely confused because the term Lucifer is completely mixed up with the term Ha-Satan, or Satan, which is a dark being. And so all differentiation is lost. But the Luciferic beings were understood as beings of great spiritual light, but who do not completely understand physical reality or the process of human evolution in the physical world. To them, it seems like we're children being tortured in a place we don't need to be, so get off the cycle and go back to spirit. Again, this is a very deep topic talking about the consciousness and activities of these beings, and it's made doubly difficult because there's so much baggage attached to the names today that are not part of the original tradition. But the basic idea here is that to one side, you can go, even with any human being, toward a type of spiritual development where you really focus on spirit, but your physical life goes straight to hell. You know, you're not able to pay the bills, and your relationships with people suffer, and you're not taking care of business, and your life's not going that well, but you're really focused on spirit all the time, but not grounded. Now that can also lead, unfortunately, to forms of spirituality that are illusory or hallucinogenic, so that the things that are being perceived and worked with are not really real, or they're distorted through our lens in a particular way that's really not helpful. And so this is connected to what classically is referred to as the Luciferic extreme. Now, on the other hand, as you might imagine, it's the exact opposite polarity. If one is connecting to spirit, but not really following the full process of creation in matter and connecting to that, then the other is going to be deeply connected to matter. It's going to be deeply connected to the process of linking onto the physical materialization process and loving physicality. The first identification of these beings in ancient texts was really in the old Persian Zoroastrian tradition. And in the Persian Zoroastrian tradition, they referred to these beings as Angramenu or Ahriman. Could you let the person in the door? Now, this being of Ahriman or Angramenu in the old Persian Zoroastrian text was contrasted to a being that was related to the being of the sun. The name was given as Ahura Mazda. And for the old Persian Zoroastrians, they said that this is a spiritual being that you can spiritually perceive clairvoyantly in the aura of the sun. And this is the same concept we have with the sun god that then later becomes the manifested concept of the solar logos in the later Western tradition. The spiritual being directly related to the sun. So it's opposed by this dark being of materiality. So human beings can fall into this as well by becoming completely materialistic, so that we don't even believe that spirit exists. Spirit is some type of illusion that we have. There's nothing but random evolution over time through completely physical biological processes, and there is no spirit, there's nothing of that kind. So this becomes a kind of modern materialistic scientific perspective that's very sharp in some ways, but has absolutely no spiritual perception. And so for complete materialists, they fall completely into this pillar. And so we can see that type of dichotomy that's being created here and holding the balance between it, between spirituality and life in the world. Now, the Ahrimanic aspect then took on other names in other times. The Gnostics referred to the being of Ahriman, or the beings of the same quality, referred to as Ahrimanic beings, as the demiurge. So you read all these Gnostic texts about the demiurge, the dark lord of this earth that created the physical world. Has many different manifestations in the Gnostic texts, and you can find variants on that in other traditions as well, like in South America. Then in Egypt, this polarity was referred to as Set, and Set was shown contrasted with Horus, and actually there would be an empowerment of the pharaoh by both Horus and Set when the pharaoh would take the throne. That term Set, when the Hebrew people left Egypt, led by Moses, who had been initiated in the Egyptian temples, that term Set became Ha-Satan, and so Set became Satan. Now, Ha-Satan is a Hebrew term meaning the adversary, and so it means that this is a being that has an adversarial relationship to the human being. And so that's where we then got the concept in the West of Satan. Again, this is a dark type of being, very different from the Luciferic beings as beings of light. And so this has to be understood as a basis, number one, to study different esoteric traditions. Because, for example, if you study theosophy, like the work of Madame Blavatsky, the Luciferic beings are actually the redeemers. Luciferic beings are actually our guides. Then in other texts, like the Rosicrucians, they say, no, the Luciferic beings have some spiritual wisdom, but we have to stay on that middle path. There's a different set of beings here. Now, this idea of holding the balance between these two types of beings is something that plays out in everyday life. And it's a constant dynamic process for every human being. If we were to strip away the veil, we would see that these invisible Luciferic and Ahrimanic beings are influencing our consciousness at all times to go to one direction or the other, just as the beneficial beings are also connecting with us. And in the ancient temple science, it was understood that our connection to these beings was purely through resonance. When we think in a particular manner, when we feel in a particular manner, all of our thoughts, all of our feelings, all of our internal states have an energetic quality to them, and they will resonate like an antenna with qualities of the exact same type in the other worlds. So if we have a very negative materialistic thought, that will resonate us with the more Ahrimanic beings.
And this is what I say. Start thinking of thoughts as spirits. Now, I came into this knowledge before I watched this. I found this a long time ago because Frater Xavier puts this on his channel. People ask him if he is Thelema or a bunch of different spiritual paths. And he says no. However, there is a path he's 75% on the side of. And this is it right here. And I've watched this video a few times now. And I never took down any notes, but I always like every time I watch this video because it explains so much in a different perception. I went in yesterday how Venus is Lucifer, how the devil is Mars, and how Satan is Saturn, which is one way of looking at it, and that's not right or wrong. That's just a perception of looking at it because these energies are in our bodies. And what he's saying here now is you got some of them on the right and some of them on the left. Now, if you go to the tree of life, Saturn is going to be on the negative pole, which is what he's talking about, Yakin and Boaz, or severity and mercy. And, Jupiter is on the opposite side. Mars is on the same side. Jupiter would be on the positive side. And there's some of these that are in the middle. The planetary energies, which is always a good thing to look at. This is path working and stuff like that. And this is why I say, if you like attracts like. If you're in a negative state, well, you're going to attract more negative thoughts. Likewise, if you start, well, I'm going to do some art today. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to draw a picture. From there you may, I want to build a bench, or I want to build a fucking, you're going to keep getting creative ideas because like attracts like. And, if you don't want to get spiritual and you don't want to think that there's these beings around you or thought forms around you, well, you can just look at it as that. It's just thoughts. It's just like attracts like, basically. You want a state of creativity and love, so you can attract like and love. Likewise, if you're trying to attract money, if you associate money with evil, well, then the only way to get that money is you have to be in a state of fear and all that, and use that fear to attract that money to you because you associated them with the same. Now, if you're trying to associate money with love, but yet you put it in your subconscious mind as something bad, then you can't do it. It's not going to connect. There's no path there for it to come to you. So that's why I say just by changing your programming, you can bring abundance to you, because like attracts like. Certain of these beings are going to bring you abundance. And this is another reason why I say I always go back and forth with demonic
Battery low.
With demonic evocation and things like that, because there's all these different concepts of Luciferian beings and Satan, which is Satan in the Bible. Jesus Christ is the only one that ever says Satan, I want to say. And he says, "Get behind me, Satan." And that's in reference to Peter, when Peter says, "I would never deny you," whatever he calls him. And this is what he says, when I'm going around with the cross on my back, basically. You are not going to, you're going to say you never met me and you didn't know me. And Peter says, "I would never do that." And he says, "Get behind me, Satan." And that forced me to look up the word and watch other things. And Satan means adversary, where here he says Hasatan originally meant adversary. It doesn't mean the devil. It doesn't mean a being below us that's judging us. This and that and the other thing. And And likewise, we say Saturn sets up obstacles for us. He is our adversary until we get him on our side, until he makes us realize our limitation, until we have to change to learn our lessons and develop our path and our passion and do things the right way and stop judging people and so on and so forth. But anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there real quick about the whole, I always say, start thinking of thoughts as spirits. And you might not want to keep focusing on negative thoughts and worry. Because if you think about it, well, you may not be able to see these things. Just like you can't see UV rays, you can't see radiation, but it's there. It's all around us. Radiation or your Wi-Fi signals, it's just like spirits. You turn on a light, it can fuck up your Wi-Fi, but it can go through your fucking walls. Spirits are the same way. You turn on your light, it's going to fuck it up. But, well, if you have the right light, mind you, but it can go through your walls as well. But things like iron holds spirits in. Lead, iron fence holds the spirits in. Lead is the one metal that radiation can't get through. That's why it's Saturn's metal. Saturn is the ruler of this earth. The one thing that people say causes cancer the most, or it's up there anyways, is radiation. Yet lead can protect you from it. But what can cure can kill? Lead poison. You can also be poisoned by lead. So it can help you in one sense. There's polarity right there. There's a good thing and a bad thing about the same thing. It has two poles, just like a magnet. It's a positive and a negative. And I liked how he said a different way for looking at positive and negative is using gender. Now, the law of gender and the law of polarity are two different things, but they go together. And you can't say women are bad and men are good, because that's certainly not what history's told us. There's been good women, there's been good men, there's been bad women, there's been bad men. Point is, this might be the reason why women were blamed from the creation story, why women didn't have rights for so long, because they were looking at them as the negative. The more this knowledge gets handed down and lost and expanded on and just treated wrong for certain people to feel above other people, this is what happens. And I'm raising 2 little girls, so I want to make sure this shit never happens again. That my little women never get treated like that, because negative doesn't mean negative. Once again, the healing energy is the negative ions. I can't stress this enough. My grandmother was a healer. She was a woman. My 2 little daughters, if I'm in a bad mood and they come up to me and they give me a hug and say something, I'm instantly healed. There's power in that. Likewise, the men, we were born with more muscle. Like I said yesterday, we are there to protect the women, our healers, our divine feminine, our subconscious mind. But anyways, like attracts like. Think of your thoughts as spirits, because if you want a bunch of shitty spirits around you, we'll keep being in a negative mood. And what I mean by that is a bad mood, a harmful mood, not negative as in a negative flow. Because everybody assumes negative with being bad, but it's more like negativity is bad, and I think that might have been done on purpose to fuck with us like everything else. Just like Lucifer got changed into the devil and Satan, they all mean the same thing. No. Lucifer is the Venus energy in your body. Lucifer is a being of light that helps you out. Puts a whole new spin on what Napoleon Hill was talking about in his book. He's having a conversation with the devil. Well, is that Marsarian energy? Is that Luciferian energy? Is that Satan energy? To me, it'd be more like the Satan energy, giving him all this wisdom and information to help him. He has to still stay in direct opposition to him. He still has to be his adversary, but it's to propel Napoleon Hill above and beyond to actually do something, get this information out, saying Satan isn't bad. Satan is here to make us our best versions of ourselves, to push us. It's like that coach that we fucking hate, but if it wasn't for that fucking coach being a dick to us and pushing us to the point where we lost our shit on him, but then realized he was right later on, or whatever the case may be, well, that's Satan's job. If we were just left to do whatever the fuck we want to do, we have free will, as he also stated. We can just do nothing all fucking day long. We can just sit around and just shit ourselves and not take care of ourselves, and not shower and all that. But there's energies that stop us from doing that. But anyways, let's get back to the show.
If we get a type of emotional striving to have only ecstatic process in our life and it's completely spiritual without ever having to do the dishes or wash the car, then that will connect us more to the Luciferic types of beings. And then, of course, things that are more of a grounded nature to the central pillar. Now, one illustration I'd like to give of this, of how this same teaching appears in multiple places, is that in the teachings of esoteric Christianity, they have a really remarkable depiction of it. And that is, if you look at any pictures of the crucifixion of Christ from medieval times, they show Christ crucified between 2 thieves. So there's actually 3 crosses, and Christ is in the center. And the 3 crosses are actually 3 pillars. And there's 3 different beings on 3 pillars, with the Christ on the center. And then toward one side, the pillar toward one side, is a thief that is shown on the paintings as inclining his head toward the Christ. And that's actually connected to the Luciferic beings. And that's demonstrated with that thief basically saying, to the second thief that you and I deserve our fate, but this man is blameless. And he asks Christ to take him with him into his Father's kingdom. Christ replies, you will be with me in my Father's kingdom tonight. Because the Luciferic beings are not really opposed to the Christic forces and things in the way that the Hasatanic beings, the Aramanic beings are. So when you see these medieval depictions, Christ is on the center, one thief is there with his head inclined toward the Christ, and the other thief has his head turned away. And that's the one that is referred to in the Gospel of John as rebuking and reviling the Christ. And because the whole spiritual quality is different here. And that's, again, a direct depiction of three different types of spiritual beings that one interacts with. Now, the problem that can come with this is that when it's stripped away from the original initiation, very straightforward context, then people can get very worked up about hindering beings and have very sensationalistic reactions to them. But it's something like if you were to be told that you have 10 billion germs on your skin right now, and you do, you have billions of germs in your skin right now, but if your biological landscape is healthy, it doesn't matter. You're going to be fine. So if you don't get all freaked out about it, it's just the way things are already working before you even knew about it. We're influenced by these types of beings all the time. We're like fish that live in an ocean that don't know there's any water. These beings are surrounding us all the time, and our boundaries are actually not solid. They move through us, our consciousness, our feeling life, all the time. That's one of the first things that would be clarified on the Rosicrucian path, is understanding these different types of influences that we come into contact with all the time. Let me hold questions to the end, if I could, please. So the next thing I want to look at is the structure of the human being. And so the human being can be nothing other than a microcosm of the macrocosm. We hear that a lot in a really abstract way. But what it really means is that the human being has to be constructed out of the manifest levels of the Godhead spread throughout the universe that take on all these different planes that we hear about. So, for instance, there are different levels of a human being. In the esoteric tradition, we'll talk about a human physical body. That's related to the earth itself. It's what in India, in Sanskrit, they refer to as the sheath made of food. That's the literal name in Sanskrit for the physical body, the sheath made of food. Because we take in physical substance, we put it into a field of force that is the outline of our body, and then it fills it out with physical substance. So the physical body is of the same nature as the earth. We draw the substance from the earth, we give it back at death. Then we have the level of life energy, that's called chi, ki, prana in the east, or the etheric in the west, from the Greek term for life energy. They have other names in the Hebrew Kabbalah, related to concepts like ruach, etc. But basically it's pure life force. This is like the life energy of the Godhead moving through the world. We take a small detachment of that life energy and individualize it to become our life body during our incarnation. It's related to the element of water in physical elements. In the Egyptian mysteries, they have these beautiful depictions of a particular spiritual being that has a function that is represented by how it's shown as being a ram-headed god. All of these animal-headed gods in Egypt, the animal is related to the function of the being. And so,
Battery low.
is working with a potter's wheel, and he's literal name in Sanskrit for the physical body, the sheath made of food, because we take in physical substance, we put it into a field of force that is the outline of our body, and then it fills it out with physical substance. So the physical body is of the same nature as the earth. We draw the substance from the earth, we give it back at death. Then we have the level of life energy, that's called chi, ki, prana in the east, or the etheric in the west, from the Greek term for life energy. They have other names in the Hebrew Kabbalah, related to concepts like ruach, etc. But basically it's pure life force. This is like the life energy of the Godhead moving through the world. We take a small detachment of that life energy and individualize it to become our life body during our incarnation. It's related to the element of water in physical elements. In the Egyptian mysteries, they have these beautiful depictions of a particular spiritual being that has a function that is represented by how it's shown as being a ram-headed god. All of these animal-headed gods in Egypt, the animal is related to the function of the being. And so this ram-headed god, Khnum, in the Egyptian mysteries, is working with a potter's wheel, and he's sculpting these energetic bodies for human beings that are about to incarnate. And so it's part of this concept. What we would call chi, ki, prana, the etheric, was related to the body of the Ka in ancient Egypt. Then we have our consciousness body, which includes both our emotional and mental function. Sometimes this is referred to generally as the astral, or sometimes it's broken down to being the emotional and mental body, which can also be referred to as the lower and upper astral. But there are all just various ways to break it apart. But essentially it's the consciousness field of God that we bring into ourselves as an individualized astral body. And that emotion and mind aspect is related to the element of air as another crystallization of the same force, but now into concrete physical matter outside of us. And then our self-awareness, our I am presence, is related to fire. This is what the Rosicrucians refer to as the ego with a capital E. But it's important to understand that when they say that, they don't mean the ego of psychology. It's not your little ego. This is your I am presence. This is your divine spark of being self-aware. So that's the whole thing to the Jewish Kabbalistic mysteries of the burning bush, I am, the 7 I am sayings of the Christ in the Gospel of John, etc. It's all about that development of pure self-awareness. Why would it be linked to fire? Because that's the pure spark of the fire, the flame from the ocean of fire of the Godhead that we have inside of us. And so to understand this type of basic structure of the human being, that every part of ourselves is a detachment from part of the levels of God that make the levels of the world outside of us, that we individualize to become a self-aware separate being. So that's an absolutely fundamental part of understanding what being a microcosm of a macrocosm is. So then when we go through a process of initiation is really a process of becoming aware of who am I, why am I here, where do I come from, and how do I develop a process by which I can become more self-aware and accelerate my process of development. Now there's a very important thing that comes in Rosicrucianism that I like a lot at this point, which is that along the path of initiation, as you begin to understand processes other people don't understand, there can be the temptation to use that knowledge to manipulate other people, or to manipulate all types of things. Let's say you understand psychology and somebody else doesn't. You can manipulate them with all types of things in neurolinguistic programming and things of that kind. What words do you use? What tonality do you use? How do you present the information? You can manipulate them all over the place. And so in Rosicrucianism, there's a very strong rule that all the powers and understandings gained on the path will be put to the service of other people. And so that's like the first rule in Rosicrucianism. Otherwise, as you develop the abilities, you will get that temptation of, well, I could get what I want right now because they don't understand this process, but I do. So initiation and inner alchemy. Alchemy has to do with the transformation of something from a base state to a higher state. But there's an important thing that's hidden in that, which is that the base state has to exist first. You're turning lead into gold, but there had to be the lead there first to create the gold. So this means that hidden within, all types of lower structures are the seed of its full fruition, very much like the classical illustration of the caterpillar and the butterfly. You don't know looking at the caterpillar that over time its entire structure has laid within it the ability to become a winged butterfly. But it's the exact same thing in the human being, which is why they depicted the higher spiritual bodies of the human being as always being with wings, traveling through the spiritual worlds. So we develop the physical body. We develop the body of life force. We develop our consciousness. And in the Rosicrucian work, there's very detailed descriptions of earlier stages of evolution. And it relates to things like Eastern teachings about the great Manvantaras, stages of planetary evolution, in which all these things were laid down at an earlier time that we're not going to get into tonight. So make it very straightforward. But then we come to the point of developing our self-awareness, the I am presence. And that's where we are today. Human beings have developed this, and now we're at this critical point of developing the I am self-awareness, which the Rosicrucians see as being the true message of Christianity. The Rosicrucians see the whole issue of Jesus and Christ being a particular human being of Yeshua ben Joseph, a rabbi who had developed to the point of being able to actually unify himself energetically and in consciousness with the being of the Christ. Now, who is the Christ? It's related to what I referred to before in the Zoroastrian tradition with the Hura Mazdal, the aura of the sun, and the classical tradition of the sun god. Because it was understood in the ancient traditions this was not something pagan, in the detrimental way we use that term sometimes today in the West, but rather this had to do with the whole way that God manifests in the world. And so if we look at our local system, the solar system, everything moves around the sun. And the sun is the inexhaustible source of life in the solar system. It is light and it is heat. Without that light and heat, we would have no life here. And it was understood that if you actually literally look into the energetic aura of the sun, there are spiritual beings of such a high nature that it would be very difficult for them to manifest into denser bodies. They need something of that level to match their own nature. And this is connected to certain of the spiritual hierarchies and to the Christ being. So when they tried to understand this whole mystery of what is the Christ in the early Christian centuries, there is a wonderful text written by one of the great early church fathers in Egypt, whose name was Origen. And Origen wrote a book called On First Principles. And in the book On First Principles, he gives a very simple and beautiful description of how can we understand what the Christ being is. The Christ being is nothing other than a being emanated from the Godhead that has all the qualities of the Godhead in a unified form, but reduced in scale to where human beings can directly interact with this being. Because it was understood originally that the Godhead is everything. The Godhead is literally everything everywhere. But you take those qualities and you create a being that has that at the macrocosmic level, and that was understood to be the Christ being. And then the human being was actually the microcosm of that emanated Godhead. We are the crown of creation, etc. And so what this means in the early Christian centuries is they understood the Christ as being of the exact same nature as the human being. The Christ is almost a kind of oversoul of all human beings at the macrocosmic level. We all connect to the Christ being. And one of the things that Rosicrucians lament is that this impulse came in from lower states of consciousness trying to understand the teachings in Christianity that then somehow made Christianity something that was a separate sect, separate from other sects, which was not the initial concept. The initial concept is that the Christ being is the actual higher consciousness aspect that is a living being at a higher macrocosmic level that every human being is connected to. It's not something for one particular set-aside group of people. Some might be more conscious of it than others, but from the perspective of a Rosicrucian, you can find people that are more deeply connected to Christ than someone that says they're Christian, who are Buddhist, Hindus, whatever. It has to do with their illumination of consciousness and what they're resonant with. And so it's a thing of this actual manifestation of the Godhead at a higher level that has all the qualities of the Godhead so we can interact with it, reduced in scale. So this I am self-awareness is something that is related to the entire Christ mystery, building through the Jewish text and then into the esoteric Christian text. So again, the 7 I am sayings of the book of John are understood by the Rosicrucians not to be that you have to pledge some type of loyalty to Jesus Christ as a kind of master in order to not be tortured or to die forever, but rather it's a matter of the I am is the way and the light. The I am is the resurrection and the life. That it's that spark of the divine inside of us that's of the exact same nature as the Christ being. There is no separation between them. They're both emanating from the same ocean of fire. That's the consciousness of God. That's the essence of all of this. And that's the stage we're at today. So the Rosicrucians see this as the point we're at where we have to illuminate our awareness, to actually illuminate that spark. Now, we've gone through a process we'll talk about in a moment where actually we have become more and more individualized. And when we actually pass through this stage at a higher level, we first become more deeply self-aware, but then we actually become aware in a transpersonal way. So not all of ourselves is so focused. But first it starts with focus on the self. We'll get to that in a moment. Now the inner alchemy of this is that once we have developed that fire, and this is represented in the esoteric Christian tradition as the flame above the head of the disciples at Pentecost. It's a literal flame that ignites a spiritual structure that moves in a vertical axis through the human body. And at this energy center above the human head, it illuminates to be the center of the Holy Spirit within Christian depictions. But I've worked with people from many other religions that know all about this first center above the head and its ignition into higher consciousness. This is a particular way it can be presented in the Western understanding. So as we develop that aspect of ourselves that's of the same nature as the Christ, same nature as the Godhead, can now illuminate with light and transform with the fire the lower bodies. That means that then we can train our I am spiritual self-awareness to actually transform our consciousness to a higher level. It's an alchemical transformation of the consciousness to become something different of a higher nature. and then it can then transform our entire body of life force, the entire etheric body, chi, ki, prana, to a higher level. And then it can actually transform the physical body. That's what in esoteric Christianity is referred to as the resurrection body of the Christ after the crucifixion, and sometimes in the esoteric text is referred to as the phantom body. In modern metaphysical terms, we primarily refer to it as the full light body. So again, what we have is the I am, once it completely develops, and we have that awakened spark of the divine inside of us, it transforms our consciousness. Now, as it transforms our consciousness, we have to start with, and now we're getting onto the road of what is Rosicrucian initiation about, and why is it done this way, to first start to analyze our own internal life. We have to be aware of, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? Because most of the time we're completely unconscious. These are the kind of things that you find in many traditions, like in the work of Gurdjieff. If you look at the foundations of Gurdjieff's work, he talks about the fact that the terror of the situation, in his terms, is that the whole human race is asleep. We think we're awake and we're walking around in the world, but we're still fast asleep, and we just keep playing out the same reactive psychological patterns again and again and again. So we have to go through a process that he calls waking up and becoming self-aware. And so we start simply observing ourselves. So the process of self-observation is fundamental in just about all classical initiation traditions. Without self-observation, you can't begin to crystallize out this level of awareness. And you can't start changing your detrimental psychological patterns of how you think and how you speak and how you interact with people and how you feel internally to something that's more beneficial. Now, over time, this develops to a higher level, to where your awareness actually becomes transpersonal, so that you're not completely focused on yourself, but rather you can take in the consciousness states of more and more people. And we'll get back to that a little bit later. This also develops into being able to think in a way that goes beyond simple mechanical thinking in our mind. It's what the Rosicrucians call sense-free thinking. It means that we can think in terms of pure archetypes. Our mind can now access the pure archetypes from the mind of God. And that's what sacred geometry was understood to be by the Greeks. So what to us seems like a very abstract philosophy. What are they talking about? They're meditating on ideal types and all these geometric forms. What are the Greeks doing with that? Why are they wasting their time with it? They understood that what they're actually meditating on was sense-free thinking, being able to actually go into resonance with the actual forms from the mind of God that hold the patterns of everything in the world. It's a communion with the mind of God. And so true sacred geometry was always on that level. And this can also give rise to something called the new clairvoyance that we'll talk about in a moment, because the whole path of clairvoyance has changed over time, because our state of consciousness used to be different. Our way that we could perceive things spiritually was also different. As our consciousness changes, how we can perceive things spiritually transforms over time. And again, the I Am can transform our life force, and it transforms our life body into what is sometimes referred to as the immortal body. It has different names in different traditions. And then transforms the physical. So the whole process of internal alchemy at its highest level is related to this. And so to understand it within its full context, there's the understanding of the evolution of consciousness. One of the Rosicrucian practices that we'll talk about at the end of the talk, as far as practical exercises, is that they examine things in the living world to see the stages that it moves through. Because they understand that within a seed is the complete pattern matrix for everything that seed will ever do once it begins to grow and sprout and blossom and fruit and wither and decay and disappear. All those stages are hidden within the seed. And so all things go through this process. So when we observe the growth of a child, we see all of these stages, one after another, in a lawful process. The life of every human being, from an infant to old age, is a microcosmic fractal of what we go through over great periods of time in spiritual development. It follows a particular trajectory. So to clarify some of this, and this is a very general gloss on it, we descend originally from spirit to earth. And with human development, we went through a particular process that in the Indian tradition is referred to as Kali Yuga. This Kali Yuga spiritual tradition was understood as being the spiritual dark age. And depending on which of the Indian teachers you talk to, Some say that we're still in Kali Yuga and will be for a long time to come. Others, such as in the Sri Yuktasvara Babaji lineage, say that it's actually already ended. And actually, the timing of the Kali Yuga Dark Age for human evolution is exactly the same for the ending point between the European Rosicrucians and the Babaji Sri Yuktasvara lineage, which is a very interesting link. So in this Kali Yuga Dark Age, we had a particular situation take place. In the early times, human beings were not self-aware. You study ancient texts, they're always identifying themselves with the tribe, the group. I am so-and-so, the Philistine, the Samarite, whatever it might be. They always identify with the group. In ancient Greece, to be exiled from your city was like a fate worse than death. Today, it's like, you're not going to put me in jail, I just get to leave the city? Great, I'm gone. But for them, to be separated from the group was terrible. It was a punishment because they had a group consciousness. So they weren't self-aware, but what they did have in early times was a lot of clairvoyance. And so you still see this with some of the traditional peoples on the earth today. Those traditional peoples preserve this type of native clairvoyance that can be quite strong. And the Rosicrucians see as actually as being related to the blood in a particular way. So what happens over time is that as we become more self-aware, we're not fully self-aware, but we're moving toward it. We're becoming more individual in our self-awareness. This leads to what the great teachers in ancient India referred to as the Kali Yuga Dark Age, because literally the clairvoyance is going dark. The people in India are losing their clairvoyant faculties, and we can no longer directly see spirit. And so there's a kind of a panic that you can see in some of these old texts that leads to the teaching of, well, the physical world's an illusion. You're about to get stranded here. This is actually a place of suffering. So get off the cycle of karma and reincarnation, off the suffering, and just go back to the spiritual world, to nirvana permanently. But it was not understood the complete sequence of this, at least the way the Rosicrucians see it. So human beings began to more and more lose the ability to clairvoyantly perceive the world around them, but they developed the ability to think in a logical, linear way and to think of themselves as more of a separate individual being. This develops over time until we reach a kind of a low point of this that is the nadir point that the Rosicrucians see as what happened around the time of the incarnation of the Christ being within Jesus of Nazareth. That is a human being attaining the state that creates the template for the rest of humanity to actually unite with the Christ being and develop that state of awareness. And so there's actually two different movements happening here simultaneously. There's an ascending movement and a descending movement. Our capacity for developing higher consciousness is going up at the same time as, in a way, we're contracting into more and more of an individual contracted state. I'm not going to get into the complete counter-movement thing here tonight because it's just too involved. But I think you get the basic idea. So at the time that we become the most individual, the most separated, the difficulty of that is we lose perception of the spiritual world, and we lose a sense of connection to everything that is. The benefit of it is that it sharpens our self-awareness. It sharpens our ability to think and to be conscious in a particular way that could only happen this way. So once that happens, and we can begin to crystallize the I am self-awareness, and we truly become self-aware, self-conscious, then two things can happen. Either we keep going down, and we become more and more self-involved and become more materialistic, or we can begin to pull back up as that I am presence fully develops, and instead of just becoming a lower and lower beast-like form of being separate from everything, it instead becomes a transcendental consciousness where now with the fully awakened logical linear thinking and the ability to be self-aware, we can now fully awaken the I am inside of us and connect not just to ourselves, but start to expand back out to be transpersonal in our awareness. So that means that we identify ourselves with, to begin with, other people that are similar to us. And so we feel links to our family. And then we might feel links to our nation, and we're patriotic or whatever. And as we expand consciousness further, we might identify with larger and larger groups. But at the highest level of expanding our consciousness, we get to the point that we know that we're connected to everything that is. And that's what you find in Tibetan Buddhism. With the Bodhisattva vow, I will continue to incarnate to help all sentient beings until all sentient beings attain enlightenment. And that's the type of transpersonal Christ consciousness that we're talking about here. There's nothing separate in us from the sentient nature of all beings. It all comes from the unified Godhead. When that goes from being an intellectual construct to something that's as self-evident to us as anything else, We start to pull up here. Now that I am self-awareness can begin to transform our consciousness. So our detrimental thinking patterns, where we think very negatively, and we ascribe all types of angry and negative types of aspects to the people around us and to the things of the world around us, we can begin to transform that and illuminate it. Again, then we transform the life body and transform the physical body. Understanding that matrix makes sense of what's within the Rosicrucian process. Okay? So we're going to pause for a change of tape, and I'll take any questions people have while we're changing the tape. Was there a question a minute ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
You were saying that the spirit beings were interacting with us and influencing us in a dynamic way.
Their natures may interact with us. And again, this is only at the most general level. But one can identify then the more aromatic influences because they really encourage us to feel very separate from other people. They encourage us to really believe only in materialistic science and nothing of a spiritual nature. It's fine to lie, cheat, steal, get anything from anybody else because we're nothing but a biological accident anyway. Then in the most extreme form of the Luciferic, they lead us toward a variety of things, whether it can be in some ways a very self-aggrandizing type of spiritual development, where once you begin to get any type of spiritual understanding, you become the little guru, and like now you know everything, and you get your own group, and you do this whole trip. Or you can take it to a place where you just want to have ecstatic process all the time. And whether that becomes an ungrounded life that's just in spiritual process all the time, and your life is kind of in a shambles otherwise, or a person actually...
My first, and once he's not around, I take a look at it.
Are you talking about the grain thing?
Yes.
Addicted to drugs, alcohol, or something else. That's another manifestation.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. I didn't know the kids were that close when I was recording that. It was hard to hear that last part, but he was taking that question, and he said that people end up becoming, they start getting that connection after, they have a connection and they get insights, and all that's real, and they're enjoying it and all that, but there's still more steps after that, basically. And, the other side of the coin was doing drugs and not really moving ahead, and, I can certainly relate to having those kind of feelings and those emotions and being in that kind of state even before this, using that to kind of like, not necessarily taking drugs because your life is shit and you want to forget and be numbed out and all that, or not necessarily doing it just because the addiction is forcing you to do it, but doing for the sheer fact of what's going on. Like, my head is always telling me that there's more to this, and then everybody else is telling me, no, that's all there is. And you work a job, pay your bills, play with your kids when they go to bed, watch TV and go to sleep. And it's like, I enjoy spending time with my wife, but to me, is this all there is? Like, and sometimes expanding your mind would be the best way to putting drugs in not a negative light, but it is definitely there's a negative aspect to it, but it helps kind of get out of your head and stop thinking those ways, so you can just do the family things and have a funner time, and you feel better doing it. Or I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say there, but it helps to stop those voices in your head. And when I say voices in the head, it's not like those voices in your head when people talk about doing suicide or doing bad things. It's the voices in the head telling you that this is not all there is to life. There's more to life, and yet you're going to ignore that. And I have, and even use substances to ignore that even further, because you feel like there's no way you can try to go down a different path because the people you live with won't understand or accept it. And it's a very hard thing to get over, but it is possible. So if there is anybody out there struggling, if you ever need to talk or, tell me your story or need some help, that's one of the things I do. I love helping people who are trying to get off or still using and want help, and especially if I get the mix of spiritual side with it. But even if it's just all about the addiction side of it all, 100%, hit me a message, I'll give you a number. I have a number on there, but I can't find that phone, so if you try calling it, I won't be able to answer. Same with messaging. My messaging is hooked up to the computer, however, it's only Wi-Fi, so it's only iMessages that will come in. Just keep that in mind. If you have an iPhone, you can send me an iMessage. Right on my website, there's an option for that. But anyways, I have another part to this I want to play, and it gets into a lot more in-depth things, and I'm going to have to do that a little bit later. I don't have time to actually break down a few of the things he was talking about in there, but there's so much important information in there that it's uncanny. So there's going to be another episode coming on tonight for sure for the next grade of the Zelter grade of the book. I mean, I'm just going to put it on and I'm going to let it play, and if it gets through more, then great, and if it doesn't, then I'm expecting it's just going to get probably a grade a night. Yeah, another way, if anybody needs to reach me or talk to me, I tried Twitter, I tried Facebook, they didn't work. I have a YouTube channel, but you can't really message on there. I'm trying to get a messaging system onto my my website, ceremonialwitchcraft.com, but it's not allowing me to do that either. So, without having all those other things, I actually set up an Instagram account. Now, the name on there is The Ceremonial Witch, but I think it goes under my Corey LeBlanc name. I recently just set it up. There's only one video from my YouTube page on there. However, there may be a way to send messages. I don't really know much about it, to be completely honest, because I don't have a Facebook account that's linked to it, and I don't know if that's needed or not. Because it says to post stuff, it keeps telling me to find friends through Facebook, but I can't do that. However, I was able to put a video on there. But anyways, if you know how to do that, and if it's possible, check me out on there. Send me a question, send me a message, say hi, give me some constructive criticism, whatever the case may be. Shoot me a message. But I have a lot more to say on this topic. I'm going to do the book for sure at bedtime, 11, 12, somewhere in that window. And I'm going to try to do the next part of this and my entire breakdown on how my opinion of it versus his opinion of it, how the perspectives are both right but can be different, and how they interweave and how it connects to the initiation and all that fun stuff. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope you have a great fucking day. Ceremonial Witch. Check me out on Instagram, check out my YouTube channel, blah blah blah, you know, all that self-promoting people do. No, I'm not going to do that. Have a good day.